Ready? Okay, I would like to call our work session to order. This is Tuesday, October 20th, and today, and I'm Alice Norris, the mayor. Jim?
James Nacita, City Commissioner.
Doug Neely, City Commissioner.
Thank you. Daphne West, Commission President.
Rocky Smith, Commissioner.
Just introduce yourself, and you should properly just name.
Elaine Cogan, guest.
Scott Archer, Community Services Director.
Maureen Cole, Library Director.
Larry Patterson, City Manager.
And very quickly around the room.
Jim Leffler, HR Director.
Mike Conrad, Police Chief.
Nancy Ide, City Recorder.
Back in the corner. Okay, back over here, William. Oh, sorry, I missed you.
William Gifford, McLaughlin Neighborhood Association and CIC.
Alan Miner, the Org Government.
Denise Kai, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director.
Bill Yates.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. I apologize for being late. It's one of the issues that we have sometimes with shared facilities. When you move into our new city hall, we likely won't have that kind of problem. So we'll look forward to that, which will be happening in less than a month. So that's exciting. Let's begin tonight. Tonight's work session is essentially centered around facilities. We have 4 of them to talk about. So what I'm intending to do is that we talk about each of them separately and then talk about them as a total. And one of the items that you have, make sure you have the spreadsheet on cost, because again, it's a work session, so we'll be getting our arms around 4 empty, not necessarily empty facilities, but facilities that have issues that we need to determine process about. So, yeah, no, I know, I'm coming back.
Yeah, they're right here.
You have the, are we missing things still? Here's a whole set. Okay, and here's another extra whole set, too. Okay, does everyone have the information? All right, let's then back up. What I wanted to do was give you an overview of where we expect to go. I know Commissioner Neely needs to leave at about 7, so we have. I assume that we're going to. That we'll be here a couple of hours. So let's back up and talk about future agenda items.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Before we begin this evening, if I could indulge the council, I have a letter I would like to read to you. And I will furnish each of you a copy of this letter. It is dated tomorrow, but I'll get this to you today. But this is my notice of intent to retire as of March 31st of 2010. As any major career decision such as this, I do have mixed emotions. I look forward to whatever new challenges and adventures lay ahead, but I will miss working with each of you and addressing the issues and the challenges that lay before Oregon City. I will miss being part of such a great and noble endeavor. But in the business of city government, there is never an ideal time to leave because there's always work that needs to be done. However, there's always a time for new faces and new leadership. I leave confident that the next city manager, in partnership with Oregon City's excellent staff, will serve you and the city well in addressing the city's future. I do retire with the satisfaction of countless accomplishments in the past 7 years, as we have faced many exciting and difficult issues and have found solutions to them. I know I take pride in knowing that I am leaving this city in better situation than the one we inherited when this administration arrived. The city is well poised to face its next challenges in the years ahead. Much work does remain to be done, and the path will not be easy, but the foundation is established, and the staff that has been built will help see it through. Madam Mayor, you know that I hold you in the highest regards, as you are one of the best mayors that I have worked for. And a little departure from this letter, as I don't think this city really appreciates just your leadership skills and what you bring to being mayor, and without you being here, we would not have accomplished what we have to date. Commissioner Neely, I too have enjoyed working with you. I've always been interested in the insights you bring to the issues and the intelligence you bring to it, and even when we didn't see eye to eye, I've always appreciated your support. Commissioner West, you are a joy to work with, and I love your positive attitude and energy. Commissioner Smith and Nacita. I have not had a long tenure with you, and I know that you have much to learn, but I look forward to your growth as elected officials. To my staff and city employees, I do not know what to say, but thank you. Thank you for your professionalism, your dedication to this city, and your support to me, and the sacrifices you have made to serve Oregon City. As individuals, you are fine individuals, but together as a team, you truly are number one. To our state, county, and regional partners, plus fellow city colleagues, I believe that their ability to work through difficult issues regionally serves not only their individual entities, but the region and our state. I have been proud to serve alongside such dedicated public servants who represent the best interests of their entities, while vigorously looking out for the interests of those entities, but always keeping an eye on the broader view of how we feel a much bigger universe. To the citizens of Oregon City, a city manager could not ask for a group of citizens who care more about their community. I thank you for your involvement, your ideas, and courage to step forward to assist and serve your neighbors and community. Finally, I want to thank my family for the sacrifices they have endured by being the family of a city manager. It truly is a great and satisfying profession, but it has placed demands on my family by placing them under a public microscope and diminished my family time when I have been away at various night meetings, weekends, phone calls, and just routine city duties. I choose March 31st as my retirement date for personal reasons, though I know it leaves several issues unresolved, particularly the presentation of this year's budget. I do stand ready to assist the new city manager and staff in any manner that would help be productive, and I would respectfully request that the City Commission consider allowing me to actually retire from PERS as of December 31st, 2009, and work back under PERS through March 31st. This will provide me the ability to better transition into the next phase of my working life and will provide a little savings for the city during the first quarter of 2010. If you choose not to honor this request, I will continue to serve until March 31st, 2010. I have enjoyed my years in Oregon City and look forward to watching the growth and the success of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that's appropriate under future agenda items. It
Should be.
obviously lays out a work plan. Truly will be an end of an era. And seven
Or an era.
years? It's an era. It's an era. And, yeah, we've worked together for a long time, and I was just talking to Lane out in front. I think it's satisfying to think back that we really accomplished most of the goals we set out to accomplish that we had identified that many years ago.
I think the major things that I had on my plate when I came to Oregon City that I felt had to be addressed have been addressed. Like always, cities continue to evolve. They never sleep. There's more now have been added to the plate. And tonight you're going to talk about some of those. One thing you will want to factor in is that transition factor, both just in terms of going through that process as well as getting everyone up to speed and, of course, blending as a new team. I know it's not a perfect time, and that'll have some impacts, so some things you might want to factor in as we talk through some of these issues.
I appreciate laying that on the table as we talk here, because that will, when Larry told me he was going to make this announcement this evening, I suggested that really will have an impact on our work, so that we need to know it up front, rather than spin our wheels there working on through some of these issues, because that will impact all the operations of the city. Okay, with that overlay,
Yes, we'd be ready.
let's move forward ahead. Jim.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to raise the issue I raised today by email as to the confusion regarding the issue of the executive session minutes and when we were going to discuss that. I mentioned that I might be interested in talking about it tonight. I'll leave that for the council, the commission, to decide whether to append that to today's agenda or leave it for a subsequent agenda.
It has been scheduled for your November
November.
work session.
Was on that list.
If you wish to move that up, again, we don't have all the preparation, but I'm sure Ms. Ide can address that. I will indicate, again, just going back, we will need to have a meeting on the 4th. There's some issues that's going to have to be taken care of. We're going to try to keep that short. And again, the work session, we talked about moving that from the 10th to the 16th. And again, I'm trying to work around that City Hall move. So.
Is that okay? Given, I mean, I
It's
don't
not-
know if we're going to get through this.
You have to leave.
Yeah.
I have
At least
to.
early.
Well, I don't know
Yeah.
if it's early, but
Yeah, and
since the court went late.
may I also suggest that unless it's an emergency, I think it's a matter of form, it's really important to publish, to have it on the published agenda, because the public then can respond to it. Staff also will have preparatory materials.
Just so as long as it's firm on the, what is it, the 13th?
Is it the...
The 16th.
It's on the 16th now.
November 16th.
Yeah, November 16th, so make sure you have that down.
Yep.
Is that okay? All right. Oops.
I turned mine off.
Yeah, I thought I turned mine off too. All right.
Just a general request, as part of the, what you're requesting be there and you have it on, I'd like to talk about minutes in general, too.
Minutes in
Yeah,
general?
absolutely.
Okay, all right. Minutes with two parts. Oh, okay. This is Larry's letter, which we'll need to put on the work session, too. Okay, let's move into our discussion. I know that one of our guests needs to leave very quickly, so if you don't mind, let's move right into that. I know there may be some other things you want to talk about, but Carnegie Center,
whichever it is, Mayor and Commissioners, as you know, we've, by some previous action that you took, we hired under a consultant contract Kogan Owens Kogan to assist us in the Carnegie process. And with us tonight is Elaine Kogan. I think some of you know Elaine, and for those of you that don't, Elaine is one of the owners and principals of the Kogan Owens Kogan Company, and will be our lead consultant on this project. And so, just very briefly, you've got a memo in front of you that's dated today with from Elaine regarding this. Hopefully, you've all got that at your place, because we'll want to look at that through this conversation. There you go. And for anybody else that would like that, I'll give those to you, Dennis, in case anybody wants those. Before I turn it over to Elaine to kind of briefly address this process, and then I think the main reason that this is on your agenda tonight is by your request, Commission, that you had asked that we come back and essentially have this conversation with you before we really launch into this process. So what you've got in this memo is a summary of our proposed meeting dates of our task force. There are 3 proposed meetings, and those are outlined in this memo. And then also, one of the important items that we need you to consider, and basically we're asking you to support this tonight so that we can move forward, is the makeup of the task force. There are not specific individual names associated with this, but rather it's an organization or an entity. And this list has been developed based on your previous input over 2 or 3 discussions that we've had, and over some conversations that staff has had with Elaine and her staff. So with that, that's a quick snapshot. I know there's more to discuss, and I wanted to leave the majority of this for you to ask questions or give direction. I'd like to turn it over to Elaine for any other comments before we do that.
Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you very much. I know some of you, and it's delightful to be back in Oregon City again, and we've worked with Larry over the years. So sorry to hear you're leaving us, Larry, but I'm sure it's for good reason, and you won't be going far. As you see in the memo, if you saw our original work scope, we are about a month or a month and a half behind, but that was just due to scheduling circumstances and everything else. We're ready to move ahead. The first important task is to appoint the task force, and so we need your ideas about, if you have individuals in mind for the task force, you probably would want to give those to Scott, I would think, rather than mention their names here. But the important thing on page 1 is the fact of the list. It is very important that this task force be representative of all the interests in the city. And we were delighted when we had our interview. We asked Larry and Denise, who are in charge of the project, basically, what is the best interest of the Carnegie Center, not you as an individual. And that's what we're going to be asking the task force, and asking them to put on their community hat. And so, however, it's very important to get all these people around the table. And then you see, on the other 2 or 3 pages, you see the agenda for the first meeting. We have the mayor welcoming us at the first meeting,
We have-
and I hope...
I haven't confirmed that part.
All right.
There is an email, Mayor, but it was sent very recently.
I hope that's on your agenda, because it'd be very important to hear from...
Will be now.
Good. And you see, we have 3 meetings. They are iterative. In other words, in each one, the first one, we're going to develop just general decision-making criteria. What do we need to know in order to make a decision about the best use of the Carnegie Center? Meeting number 2, we're going to move further into that issue. We are also going to have a public event at the Carnegie Center, and hopefully to distribute the information widely so that we have, again, as many people as interested in the center to be there. And we were going to use a web-based survey so that, and advertise it so that, again, people will be able to participate. We're doing everything we can to test the sentiments of the people in Oregon City. And we'll put out a fact sheet, we'll have web information, and so on. So you can read all of that, but I think the main thing we did want to hear from you today is this list inclusive of the types of organizations or entities who should be representative on the task force? Should we add any?
I have one.
Yes.
It seems to me they're missing when you do have the Chamber of Commerce, but a business on 7th Street, to me, would, or, in the area around,
All right.
I think would be important.
Now, apparently, and we do need some ideas for Heritage to represent the Heritage Historic Preservation Community.
You will have an abundance of those.
Yes,
you will. That will
All
not be
right.
a difficult one.
Okay, well, that's good. All right. So we've added business on 7th Street. Thank you very much, Mayor. Any others?
Daphne.
Well, I just can't, I don't know, just an idea. Do we want someone from the school district, elementary schools, middle school, high school? I don't know. That usage could possibly be related to a school activity.
Oh, what about
Well, we have a student.
Community schools or...
We put a student on. It's been my experience, if we could get a high school student on this committee, it would be very worthwhile. But if you're talking about the school district representative, that's
For a
something
school
else.
district, school board, I don't know, I just...
All right. Why don't we add it? That's fine. Thank you.
Or community school, I mean, they're related.
Community, yeah,
I wouldn't mind, community school's right down the street at Eastham, so
Oh, okay.
it's kind of
That's
also,
two separate things.
All right. Good.
Yeah, that's a better one, really.
That's a better one, would you say, than the school district?
well, it really might be, but
Or do we want both?
well, they're related, so depending on who the representative is,
All right, we'll
that's the
see.
information.
We'll see who
Could be
we can
both,
get.
sure.
I presume you're not interested in specific names at this point on
No.
these categories?
No, but
Pass
please
those
give
later.
them to Scott.
I will.
Uh,
If you have-
Yes, if you do, right.
Ideas.
We're going to start tomorrow asking people, so this is a very quick turnaround.
And on, some of these will be where their organizations will go to that organization and say, please,
them.
would you please select a representative?
Sure.
And we'll just take who they give us. Some of them are not as organized of an entity that we might have to go and solicit specific people.
Okay, any others? Daphne?
And then is the Atkinson Memorial Church, is it supposed to be representative of the neighborhood churches? Is that what that is? Is that
We
what-
put that there because it's across the street from the center, and we thought they would be an affected church or an effective entity in the neighborhood. I'll call the pastor, whether they want their clergy to be representative or a board member, will be up to them.
Others? Or are they, and beyond that, any questions of while Elaine's here about the process, or shall we just give her our blessing and send her off?
And we certainly hope you'll be participating. You're welcome to come to the meetings, and certainly the public event will let you know far in advance.
December 14th, is that one?
Right now, right.
Right, 7th or 14th.
We're not sure.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you. That's, sounds like
very
you've
much.
got a good, hopefully a good start.
Yes, thank you very much.
So send those names in quickly. Thank you both. All right, let's move right on then to library facilities. Our staff, yesterday, Maureen and a group of my library board members and friends of the library, and did any cities, I don't think any cities.
These three
commissioners
library
went.
board members right here.
All went on a tour yesterday of 2 new facilities, and as we look forward to whatever we're going to do, it's really good to have that background. So, Larry, are you starting?
Let me just kick off. You have 2 issues, Nat, both the library and the police facility, which are major decisions, which I'll come back and kind of summarize those. I'm going to let Mo kind of go through and chat with you a little bit about where we're at and kind of what we're looking at, and then we'll have a discussion on where you want to go. But it's one, too, that on the surface it may be easy to say yes, but I think this is a very in-depth decision, so it's one we want to definitely make sure we think through and think about the timing also. There's a lot
So you're not going to have this done by March 31st?
I wished I could.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah, yes.
brief
Jim.
interruption. I'm really chilly, even with
Yeah,
this
I
long
am-
chilly shirt.
I am freezing
I'm
as well.
noticing people put on the sweaters. What
I'm
is
sitting
with-
on my hands.
What is with the air conditioning in here?
Can we make an adjustment? We're trying to. Thank you, thank you. I figured you probably heard my teeth chattering. All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and
With that chilly reception.
commissioners, yes, but warm heart, cold hands, is
Yeah,
what they
yeah.
say, right? The report that I sent you a couple of weeks ago gave you kind of the history of where we've been and where we're at, and this is kind of related to what we just talked about, you may know that we moved out of the Carnegie over 15 years ago into a supposedly temporary location, which has turned into a little bit more permanent than everybody would like.
We're in the temporary city hall.
Yeah, a theme. There was 5,000 square feet in the Carnegie. They more than doubled that by moving into the Danielson former grocery store, and we now have 13,000 square feet. But according to the Oregon Library Association standards for a service area of our size, which is close to 60,000 people, we should be in a facility that is closer, if we really stick with that, it should be more like 40 to 45,000 square feet. So there's no doubt that we have run out of space long ago. And as you know, the building itself is not exactly welcoming, but we have an amazing, amazing patronage, and people really come visit us. So we are well supported by the circulation and what goes on there. And you may also know, I know you know, that Craig Danielson has plans to remodel that mall at some point in time. So our lease there is of a finite period of time. We just don't know how long that is. So we have to start looking at other facilities. Now that we have the library district in place and we have a consistent and stable source of funds for operating funds, we need to start looking at what are we going to do about capital improvements. So we put together some guesstimate figures, and then just tell me when to stop. You want me to stop talking? And we just really need you to start to give us your blessing as to moving forward on this or not. We need you to think about that.
Let me walk through these, and again, there's several issues that you're talking about. You're talking about the library, you're talking about the police facility, and I'll have Chief Conrad talk about that here in just a second. Of course, the Carnegie is a major facility. There's going to be some cost possibly there. And you've also asked us to explore the purchase of the Sternwheeler, and Mr. Archer will be visiting with the captain later this week, so we'll refine some of those numbers there that you see are question marks. But looking at this, and there's no magic here in terms of maybe the order these fall in, because each campaign can kind of take on a little different scenario, but there's a major cost when we move forward on these issues. That's why we have to be sure if we want to do that, because once you give us the go, we're going to start trying to identify these dollars, and we'll begin to start making those steps. So again, if it's not something that, you need to think about the transition, not just myself, but also with the commission next year, and when we do it. I think at the earliest possible date, in police, we could probably do a little earlier than the library, is you're looking at probably November 2011, and we're checking whether that date actually can be used. You could do the police in May of 2011. One of the other decisions that you have is, do you go both at the same time? Do you go as a combined building? Do you do one and then the other? And I've given you some spreadsheets kind of showing rising cost of Oregon City, and those were built into those. But let me just take the library, since we're on that topic right now. To arrive at a decision process, particularly if you're going to the ballot, we have always gone through some type of involvement process to get the feedback from the communities. That also will help you shape whatever campaign you may come out. Now, depending on what you do, that cost is probably going to be somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000, depending on what you do. Luckily, we've been fairly fortunate. We've been more on the lower end of that, but it really depends on how extensive that process is. The library, we're kind of starting from scratch. You're going to have to go through some, in part of this decision process up here, you need to bring the community in, because you still have to really come to consensus on a site. That's going to take some time to do that. Then you're going to have to come up with some preliminary engineering costs, similar to what we showed you with police, and that's all preliminary stuff, just to kind of get an idea of what is needed. That you're going to spend some money doing that, and that's kind of what we've taken the number we spent on police and just kind of plug that over, and that can vary as well. When you actually begin to get into a final decision, you can see the design and engineering costs. That's usually a percentage of what the construction project is, and I think we calculated that at about 7.5%. I think that's about the going rate these days. Then you get into a campaign. Again, that's not something you're going to take out of city dollars, but you're going to have some group go out there and raise dollars and help conduct that campaign. In the library's case, we still need to look at site acquisition, and I think at a minimum you're going to end up somewhere around the $1 million mark, could go a little higher than that, and then construction, quick estimate without really having done much is, in terms of what is needed, is $10 million, and I think that's going to put you somewhere in the neighborhood of the 35,000 square feet. May give you a little bit more depending on really what the cost per square foot, and that's going to depend a lot on the quality that you put into a library. Then, depending on what...
I think you might be 5,000 to 10,000 square feet off, according to your director to your left.
Well, yeah, I think what you're going to see with the group, and this is, you're going to
It's a
raise two
decision, I
questions
know,
here.
I understand.
As you go through the group, you're going to define, or the public process, you're going to define what the desires and the wants are, and then you're going to have to balance that with what you think you can ask for.
Yeah, she just said 40,000 to 45,000, so I just wanted to kind of point out that disparity.
During the course of this, there's a good chance one way or the other you're going to have to move, and your soft cost, that's a really rough guess. That's that bottom line down there, but you also may have to have a temporary location depending on what happens at Danielson, and don't have a clue what that would be, but put in the 500,000 there. So in the end, you can see that's a major decision with very many costs. And these are very, very rough ballparks, but it'll give you some idea of at least the areas, and I think some idea of what you're going to be looking at and those costs. And you can kind of run that across police. It's a similar process. We're a little further along with that. Again, there's some issues why the police we're really going to have to make some decisions there. Carnegie, that's a little bit more. If we don't change anything at the facility, it depends what happens, is that could be cheaper, but there's a good chance you might have some internal stuff that you may have to do there. So you're going to see some costs there. In the Sternwheeler, we're still gathering that information.
Okay, so what I would really like to encourage us to do is to have a presentation by each of the facilities, then discuss them after we do that. But certainly, any questions on this one? Do you have more in presentational?
Not really.
Okay.
I think we're just ready to answer any.
Okay, great. Let's ask questions then about this, either this presentation or something else. Doug?
Yeah, I'm not sure all the points in the history were listed here, but I think it was even before I was on the library board, there was a combined fire station and library bond that was put forward. They both failed. And at one point, there was a library alone, I believe, and then a fire station alone. The fire station failed and the library station failed. It might be worth looking at, especially since we might be talking about a police station, the pros and cons of running them together or running them separately. And I think you were referring to that, but you got a little history that you might look at with those entities.
You're right. We would want to look at the history and maybe other municipalities where things succeeded. Now, we're just a little bit unique in that the library has a service district that does not match the city. And so that's a pretty big issue. And so we really need to think about that and how this all comes together. So, but thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
So what you meant, though, was whether we should run campaigns together, but I also think that on the table should be whether the facility should be co-located. But I don't think we know that yet until we do the site study.
That'll be part of your public process and site. The other thing, again, with the library that you need to factor in, and I've given you this before, is the other sources of revenue that you have to access. So that can, depending on what you do there, that will determine how much your bond issue may come down in that case. And again, you have a pledge from the county in forming the district of $1 million. You do have right now about $200,000 annually that comes from the general fund, goes in the library that we've been putting into a building dedication fund. You have about $130,000, I think, on an annual basis you're paying for lease that you could redirect to debt service. And if you located it in the urban renewal district, at some point the plan does call for an expenditure of $4 million. If you do not do it in the district, that's $4 million that you don't have to bring to that. So, again, but those pieces could really come pretty close to that $10 million figure.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't looking, so I'm not sure who was first. Let's do Daphne then. Daphne, Jim, and Doug. Thank you.
So is it a given, or are we all in agreement that the police station's going to stay in this location, that you have 0 for the site acquisition?
That's our recommendation to you.
That's next.
Well, just a question.
Do you have more?
No.
Okay, Doug? Jim. Oh, I mean, Jim, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Larry, I remember several months ago, in an earlier discussion about the library, you had mentioned, if my memory serves me correctly, that before last year's library initiative that was passed countywide, there had been some prior dedicated funds county at the county level for libraries, and there was some controversy as to whether that was something that Oregon City could access as far as library funding.
Part of the library, the formation of the library district, is the county pledged $1 million towards a few of the libraries, Oregon City being one of those. We have indicated we would like to discuss with them maybe a larger contribution, of course. That's going to be difficult to get. Counties, like everyone else, there's difficulty with money. And then the other piece that goes into that, what I had recommended in that memo, is that we redirect the money we're now paying for lease space to debt service. That could be a little controversial, even though I think most folks will agree we can do that. Going back prior to that history, there was some interactions between the city and the county about location of a library on the Red Soils campus. And depending on who you talk to is exactly what happened there, but it unraveled, and anyhow, that train left the station a long time ago. So other than that, those are two things I recall.
Doug.
It was part of the formal master plan, but it did unravel. In any case,
I'm being nice here.
Yeah. In terms of the conflicting costs, well, I mean, since I'm a citizen, I can express views, and I'll express one. before the Carnegie got renovated, and it's actually, some of its usable space got reduced in the process, there was a children's museum there. Children's museum came back, but it was a lot smaller and the opportunities were less. But it always struck me that that would be something that would be nicely associated with the children's library, but it has other things going for it. So I hope in this discussion process we look at that. I know you had meetings, Scott, with people that were sorry to see the Children's Museum go, and I know you had meetings with those people and so forth, but I know there has been the continued interest for that kind of activity. Just throwing that out there.
And one of the things that you'll want to try to dovetail this, you'll want to wrap up a lot of the Carnegie decision, which I think Scott is scheduled somewhere towards the end of the year, and we're a little behind, so we're after the first year. So that hopefully will be completed before you get too far into the public discussion about siding for library and what you want in a library.
Okay, any further library questions? Okay, we'll come back to it, of course. All right, let's move on then to police facility.
Paul Bounty of LRS is going to join me here because he's been intimately involved in some of the proposed redesigns of the current facility and the future facility if the commission decides to pursue that.
Hi. And I just might mention for the record, we've done that before, but we have also had tours of police facilities that several commission members went on along with you. So
I think at a commission meeting, I believe it was back in August, I came before the commission and proposed or tried to get some direction as far as whether or not we should proceed towards building the new police facility or what we would do with the current facility. And at the time, I received direction to go back to the CIC and the Chiefs Advisory Committee and to get their feeling on that. And since that meeting, I've done both of those, and both of those groups have indicated they think it would be prudent for us to move forward with the building of a new police facility.
ditch this one.
Yes, build a new one. But part of the issues that we're facing now is when this building is vacated next month, we're not able to occupy the part of the building that's been vacated until certain seismic standard conditions have been met. We had a structural engineer come out and do a study of this building, and he came back with eight recommendations on what would bring this building up to seismic standards. He had 3 priorities, another few that would bring it into 100% compliance, and then a few more on top of that, which he thought needed to be done too, because it would further enforce the structural integrity of the building. Those 8 recommendations altogether came to a little over $1 million. So even to renovate this building without any improvements to the efficiency or design or the extra space is going to cost the city $1 million, over $1 million. So it seems to make sense to me that putting $1 million into this building doesn't appear to be a good use of public funds, because we haven't begun to touch the redesign of it or making improvements in it to make it more efficient or addressing the critical space needs that we face. So I'm hoping to get direction from the Commission that a new facility is needed and to begin the steps towards achieving that, or trying to put a bond measure out, or at least finding the funding to the new police facility built.
Let me add to a couple things there, too. Is, again, I want to underscore the fact that just to get this building occupiable for police functions with the seismic retrofit, those recommendations, as well as what internal modifications, you're going to be somewhere between $1 million and $2 million. And what you have there, you made an expenditure on a facility that still does not meet the needs of the police department. Now, the chief has been working on this issue of can we utilize the existing space, and we've met with Guy Spurb, and we think we can utilize it in the following manners, and correct me if something has changed since the last time we met. There are a number of what I'll call non-essential, I hate to call anything we do non-essential, but the court,
as defined by
the court records, code enforcement, we can move over in that section of the building, so we can utilize that. We can move police back into the trailers. We can do that if we have a plan of how we're going to address the long-term issue. And what I'm recommending to you as a plan is, I think we need to move forward in talking about this police facility. So we can utilize the space, but it's not optimal, and to us, it doesn't make a lot of sense to invest in this building when it doesn't meet the needs, we have to. And we do have, by 2020...
2022.
We've got to address the seismic issues of essential facilities. So it's a long haul. It's a lot to ask. The need's there, and definitely it's a better expenditure of public dollars to do something on a permanent fix than try to put lipstick on.
And it's also, my understanding also, that if we do occupy or move part of our operations over to this building, we still have to have a plan in place to meet these seismic requirements and actually show progress towards meeting those. So there would still have to be some type of expenditure of funds to meet some of those requirements that were put in place for us. So we can't simply move part of our operation over there and still not have a plan to address and work towards achieving some of those standards that were put out for us.
Okay, so site acquisition is 0 here. So is one of the plans to raise this building and build it here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And the issue there, and that's where we got some of the costs. In doing that, we're going to have to relocate the police department into temporarily, and then build it and move in. And we might be able to do a little bit of phasing there, but given how this building sits on the site, to really take advantage of the size of this site, probably going to have to move it off-site, tear everything down, and build from scratch. And an idea, for instance, and I don't know what the end design would be, but you may want this building oriented towards the street, which may help us solve some of these curb cuts we got out here that end up to be a little interesting during the day when people are coming and going. So, and then you'd have your police parking in the back of that building that they could exit out of. So,
Okay, Doug?
Just clarification, we have the proposed immediate plan, which we've seen the proposed immediate 2014. You got a 2009 immediate plan and 2014 immediate plan. The $1 million applied to which one?
2009.
Okay. And what you're proposing is if the commission gives direction to look at essentially trying to get funds to implement the 20-year plan instead, we won't be making the $1 million commitment. That is, I mean, I've got a problem with investing here and then coming in a couple of years and asking for the passing of a bond if we've committed $1 million. I think, first of all, the public would have a negative perception about the use of that money when it was only going to be used for a facility that was very, very temporary. And I would, as a member of the public, have a problem with that.
Trust me, we feel the same way. We do have an issue that goes beyond our control here, is we're going to have to have some sign-off from, I'm going to say the state. I think Guy can probably make a lot of those decisions, but the state may come down and says, no, you at least have to do this much. And there's really, we're going to try to hold those costs to a minimum, but we don't have unlimited authority here, so we're going to have to work around the rules and regulations that exist and try to stay within those as we move forth our plan. Now, we're going to have ongoing discussions on what we want to do, trying to keep those costs down. Plus, also, even if we launch today, as you're looking at an election in 2011, you're looking at construction, we still have to be able to make this work for police and court and those operations for another 4 or 5 years before we can even get in a new building.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And I know there's another downside of doing the lipstick on the pig here, which is also required.
Don't look at me when you say that.
Oh, you're a short-termer.
That applies to Alaska, not Texas.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was a statement about this space.
Back to police. Because another thing I know we talked about in that tour is that if the fix-up is too nice, then the public perception is that it's done, it's good enough, and it's not, and the need isn't there. So
Right.
it really is a delicate, I think, dance that we'll be doing.
Absolutely.
So-
Further complicated by those seismic standards that we're required to meet
Exactly.
by
Yeah.
state law.
Yeah, Daphne.
So I was just going to add that I don't see, or I see the need for both facilities as a given. I mean, we need a library, we need a police station, but the challenge will be what comes first, or if they're together, and how we're going to package it. That will be the challenge for us to, as a community, to sort out where we're going to go how we proceed next.
And I think once we get, that if we give the go-ahead, though, then both groups have processes that you will embark upon, correct?
Correct.
To assess all of those answers.
You know, again, and you all know this, just being veterans of elections, but if we're looking at 2011, you're going to have to really work hard this next year to clear the agenda so that these two items kind of dominate what you're doing, because everything else will be a distraction for you as well as the public, so it'll be tough to pass.
I hate to be the rain cloud here, but as I stated earlier, if we go out for a bond, and if that's the way the commission directs us to go, and that goes out in 2011, and for some reason it fails, there still has to be a Plan B somewhere. At some point, we need to address what is a Plan B if that bond does not pass, because we are required to make this building, or a building, meet seismic standards in 13 years. So, and 2 years will go by before that even gets on the ballot.
Yep, that's true. I mean, there's definitely sequencing with risk. Doug?
I understand the need to put forward a campaign and so forth. I presume that it's just too much of a short period to do a bond request in November 2010. And one of the reasons for asking that, if we found it failing then, but we found that, in fact, there seemed to be a fairly strong support, we have the opportunity to look at it again and see what we need to do. My fear is this: we go out a couple years out, we don't do it in the more near future, we put it forward, and we fail, and then we've got to find the alternative. What we need to do as an alternative, then we're going to make more major expenditures, and then there's going to be even a greater reluctance to, I think, get a bond measure passed if we've invested a great deal in this facility as your Plan B.
I agree.
And I mean, you've had a lot more experience, Larry, than I have in bond issues, but if there's a mechanism, even if it's to put it out in May 2010 as opposed to 2011, as opposed to November 2011, and I realize there are issues in putting it together, but you've already got a overall picture of the kind of design that you think might be necessary. So it appears we're not starting from square one on this process if you're given the go-ahead by us.
Right, it's farther ahead than the library, for instance.
Yeah.
Let me indicate,
Now we got the land.
Anything is possible, and I won't say that you couldn't do it in 2010. I would say I think you probably would not be successful if you did it that soon, for a couple of reasons. There's a lot of information that has to be developed here. I think, too, this is really going to be dependent on our ability to go out and begin to discuss this issue in the public, and we've got to develop some information to do it. I will also indicate that it's always iffy, because, and this is something you don't know, of trying to do a bond measure like this in a council election, because you don't know what the candidate feels and what folks can say. If you could tie up all candidates so that they were talking in favor of it, it certainly makes things a lot easier. I've done that before and was successful, but really had somebody organize all candidates and they didn't oppose the issue. If you have any of that debate going on, it could be difficult. My feeling is, if you're going to do a campaign, you try to package it and do it as good as you can. That's going to give you your best chance of success. At that point, if it fails, you'll get some reading on why, and you can then repackage it and bring it back out. I think the thing, if the need's there, from this day forward, you're going to have to continue to talk about that until you do get it, because the only thing I can say, with the library, I can see where we can piece together most of the funding elsewhere. With the police facility, I think it's something that you're going to have to ask the voters for 100% of it to put it together. Just with the exception of those dollars, which we may be able to bring back in and buy down or pay off some of that bonded debt without charging the voter for it with those new annexation issues. But again, with development being as slow as it is, that could take a long time for that stuff to come in. So, and just the work to be done, you can do it. We're ahead of the library right now with police, so we could conceivably look at May of 2011, but that's a short time frame too. Even November is getting close. There's a lot of work that has to be done between now and then.
Yeah, and as someone who, I've been a professional campaign manager, I never take a campaign that doesn't at least have 18 months lead time, and I think this is also complicated by some perceptions that I think are going to be tough. One is, when we move to the new city hall, there may be a number of our citizens that believe that the police are there too. Or, I mean, I just think getting the picture of the need out with...
They'll think this will
they'll
satisfy
think that this
Yeah,
is
this is
satis,
enough,
right.
yeah.
And so I just think that building the case is going to take a serious amount of building blocks. And I mean, I've worked with the police department on campaigns in the past, and they are very hard workers. We've got to mobilize the entire community, as we did for the fire bond. And that's, as I see some heads nodding, I see some weary campaign workers in the audience, and it's a satisfying work, but it really takes a long time.
The other thing that's really an unknown, because you will have next year at least one new member of this commission, and we have learned this lesson the hard way, is you will need to be unified, and you don't know what that
Yep.
new member's thinking. So.
Yep. It's very, very difficult to pass anything when you don't have a 5-zip vote. Daphne?
And then the only other thing we haven't added to this discussion is the economy. Here we are out with our hands out right now, and it's, many people are,
Yep.
just worried about their day-to-day living, so.
On the other hand, though, when I was really amazed when I looked at the League of Oregon Cities election list of things, that it appears that when the need is great and the community is behind it and senses it, so I mean, that's why the preliminary work is so important, to go out and assess whether the community, whether this is on the community's radar, when they see this as a need, because even in tough times, if the issue is compelling enough, citizens will.
Oh, yeah.
We'll go for it, but it's got to be compelling. Other questions, comments at this point? Are you just going to sit here? Okay. That's an easy way to get off of the hook here, isn't it? Okay. Thank you very much. Do you have anything more, Mike?
I do not, thank you.
Chief, sorry.
Guess the question is, how do you want to discuss this, or whether you want us to go forward? Because once you give us that, you can see we're going to start identifying funds and spending money, and that's a big step.
Okay, the next, may I step in before, just to clarify the question, not shutting you off, that we have 3 facility issues we've already discussed. You know, one, Carnegie is kind of spinning off on its own, and we know that we'll get a recommendation on that. Okay, library, police are somewhat similar in that they have support groups, and so you don't have a consultant hired, but you do. So there's work that's begun, and then the 4th thing that we'll be talking about is our new property down at Abernathy Green, and the former CHP's facilities and what to do with those. So we could separate that and talk about library and police first, or would you like to wait till we kind of see what status quo is on that and talk about it all together? Jim?
The question I have actually is whether we can make such an authorization at a work session as opposed to during a formal city commission meeting.
We can give the go-ahead.
Give the go-ahead. You're going to have to come back and make some
There'll be
formal decisions.
many decision points along the way, but I think
Because we'll have to bring these
Yeah.
type contracts back to you.
it's should they continue to do the work, because we believe that that's important work to do.
And that's what I'm not clear on, is whether even that kind of directive can be given at a work session as opposed to a formal city commission meeting. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, no, it can be. It's do you have questions? Is it okay for them to do that? I mean, it's really a sort of an acclamation, a lack of.
We're not so much asking
Yeah,
you
it's
to
not
make
voting
that
on
call
anything.
tonight, as much as what is the process to get to a decision, and when can we do that? Because again,
Yeah,
if
we
it is
just move
something
forward with it.
that where you want to go, this needs to be made fairly soon, because there is a lot of work that has to be done.
Yeah, so process, I think, is really the important thing tonight. Now, how do we want to get our hands around that? And that's certainly going to be true with the Abernathy Green process. We have a process for Carnegie Center. It's already spinning. So do we get these other 2 spinning?
Yeah, you probably want to talk about the EOT and the VIC here before, and then come back and figure out how do we proceed on facilities, because they're all going to tie, and you only have so much resource, and again, you only have what are you going to ask the community about? Because this is big.
Yeah, and I think what I would like clarity on in a future discussion sometime also is that, I know these numbers are all ballpark, but what of these are going to be general fund things, and where are our other sources of funding coming from? So separating out which will be asking the community and what will be competing
The
general fund.
Yeah, the first of your
acquisition
decision process
requests.
and your preliminary engineering is where we're going to have to find monies to spend.
That's general fund?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you may spend some design and engineering, but most of the rest of the stuff you're going to wrap into whatever bond measure that you do.
Okay. That's good to know. All right. Further questions? Why we'll then talk about the EOT facility and then kind of come back. I mean, I'm ready to talk about these two now. If you want them to go forth and continue to do the work.
I
What do you
actually sort of feel the same way. The other one's a little bit distinct, I think. On both of these that we talk about, we're going to have to look for public funding. And
Right.
It's not clear to me that we would be doing that on the interpretive center.
Yeah, it's
And
not
so
overlapping
it makes
funding.
sense, I think, to talk about both the library and the police station together at this point.
Okay. That's fine. All right. Let's talk about those two facilities then. I mean, I'm comfortable with saying to the groups and to the two department heads to continue to do the work. I mean, to me, they're important, and I think at a subsequent session, I think we might need to argue who goes first. But I don't know right now that we know that, because to me, having the community survey work done is going to help us know that what in the public's mind is most compelling. And I think we don't necessarily know that. I mean, we all have our passions, but that's always given us good information in the past.
Let me be Dr. Doom here for just a moment.
Sure, Dr. Doom, go ahead.
And again, you can do that, and because I understand that those are two different. It's the preliminary stuff where it gets a little tricky, because with the library and the police, let's say just for round numbers, we're talking about between those two, $100,000. Then whatever we do with the Carnegie, that will add to that, and then if we decide to do anything with the Sternwheeler, that will all be that, and then probably some additional monies with the EOT. So that's the dollars, again, that will be hitting your existing funds. So, but doesn't mean you can't do it. It just, it's where do you stretch it?
Sure, Daphne.
So, Larry, you said $100,000 for preliminary engineering, or for what?
For the library and police both, you're looking at that decision-making process. Let's say each of those are $25,000, and your preliminary engineering, let's say, is roughly $25,000, so $50,000 for each. That's $100,000.
Okay, that's where I was
In
wondering
those
how
four boxes, yeah.
Okay, the four. And then, so those would entail some kind of community survey of some sort, or public?
I would recommend you do something.
It'd have to be.
Both of them will have citizen processes, and both of them will have
And the library will be more
consultants.
lengthy because you got to pick
Yeah.
a site.
And then there likely has to be some community
Okay.
outreach on that, so. Doug?
Yeah, I mean, that decision, and this comes back to Commissioner Nocita's point, the decision on the expenditure of monies has to come before the commission, before we expend those monies, and I think that's where the difference is. Do we want them to proceed to bring us back something?
Yeah,
And
no, I think that's what's
That's
before
what
us.
the question is, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a red light, green light thing.
Yeah, and from the point of the Sternwheeler, I think it's a very distinct question, frankly, and you'll be coming back to the commission on that, too. Should we get
Well, let's
into
wrap that into the tourism discussion, which we'll have later.
I'm trying to figure out how you assess a boat. Haven't done that one before.
Jim?
I actually have a question, because I'm looking at this $1 million chunk of change for site acquisition for the library. And I'm wondering, as part of the research, has it extended to the point where we can really, really say for sure, certain, that there's no city-owned property that could be used for the library site?
Oh, I could think of some.
I don't think anything's really ruled out at this point.
No, nothing's ruled out at this point.
Okay.
Everything's on the table. And combos are on the table as well.
And it could go much higher than that,
Yep.
Sure.
but you want to stick something in there. So.
Right.
Part of that's going to depend a little bit, too, on the size of the building and how it's designed, and how big a site you need.
All right. So let me ask the question another way then. Are there any of those that really would like to put the brakes on either of these projects right now? And I don't see any head nods for that. Is that enough for you
Yep.
to
We'll start
bring
packaging things to
packages
bring
and
back.
start working with your support groups, et cetera? Do you have concerns, questions about this then? We have questions from the audience. William, you'll have to come up here to the microphone.
Excuse me for interrupting.
Yes.
I just want to know,
William, I don't think your mic's
Please
on.
introduce yourself.
Excuse me, William Gifford, Oregon City. The surveys that would be taken for public input for both the library and the police, would that be concurrent?
It could be.
Yeah, and I would think there'd be a big advantage to that, just because people don't like to take surveys more than once, and depending on which one came out first, the second one, oh, here's another one. No,
Well,
it's-
I'm sure the departments will find ways to overlap.
And-
That's
yeah,
an easy
combining
one.
that would be tricky,
It'll
yeah.
depend
Thank you,
on
Al.
the process. that-
And when?
Yeah.
Because you need to do the public opinion pretty close to when you're going to do the work, so.
And that's
Okay.
on to working with whoever. They'll help define exactly how they think it's best for us to gather that information.
Okay, well, we'll talk about this again many times, so good luck. All right, let's move on then to the fourth facility, and that is the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center, which includes the current visitor center. I see Linda Bell is here, who is the head of the Tourism Development Council for the county. Welcome, Linda. And do you want to come up here to the is someone other staff person? Why don't you come up here to the table, Linda, so it's easy for you to answer questions if there are any.
Let me
And
give
Larry,
you
do you wanna
just a quick overview of this. I think all of you are very familiar with the issue we find ourselves
These
in.
are the papers that we have before us.
And you
Some
know,
of
we
those apply.
we gave you a bunch of information this evening. I want to refer first to the memo that I put together for you, and there's no magic here because there's a lot of guesswork in that. Thing I really want to underscore, though, you have two issues working within this larger issue of the tourism product. One has to do with the operation of the visitor center, and then the broader issue of those two is what do you do with the EOITC? Right now, the Visitor Center, I think all of you are aware, is funded through TDC, and that is in a contract with CHP, and they're continuing to do that until we decide where we're going with that issue. There is an opportunity here to continue to work out some arrangement with TDC for the operation of the Visitor Center. I think that is kind of a short window that we have to make a decision on, and then the EOITC is a much larger issue, but it doesn't seem to me to make much sense on the long term to deal with the VIC if we can't solve the bigger issue of the EOITC. You also have a number of proposals that have come in and continue to come in terms of different things that people have ideas of running the center, and I've given those to you. And then I know there's been a public process, too, with citizens kind of talking on a broader scope about tourism and this facility. And so with all of that, it's wherever you want us to go with this issue. So.
Okay, and I think what would be helpful, I think, tonight is to determine a process. And I think one of the issues that we need to resolve is, funding also of a process, if we have one. What will the process be? And then, of course, how we get to the long-term vision. And I think it's, if it's to be a shared facility with the county as it currently is, maybe it would be good for us to hear what the county is thinking, interested in that, is currently, because if it's to be a partnership, the window may not be open for very long, so that will help us at least understand the steps that that might be available to us. Linda, are you able to give us a little background on that?
I can. I don't have any definite date, but we have for the past several months Tourism been working with a task force.
Sorry. Linda Bell, Director of Tourism for Clackamas County. For the past several months, we've been working with a task force to take a look at the way we deliver visitor services to people coming to Clackamas County. And it's not just about physical locations like visitor information centers, because in today's world, less and less people stop at visitor centers, and they get their information from the internet, from their GPS unit in their car, from their telephone, a variety of ways. But we still know that a physical location, visitor information centers, are important. So it was a part of the discussion. It is also framed by the fact that we have a new facility that is going to be built at the Zigzag Ranger Station on Highway 26 as a part of the Mount Hood Scenic Byway, and that will be funded in part by Forest Highway funds, in part by Scenic Byway funds, and in part by the Forest Service budget. We will probably, as the county, help with some displays and some staffing eventually for that to become a visitor center up in that part of the county. We also are on track with an organization called the Oregon Travel Information Council, who, through the new transportation program funding, will receive money to operate some of the rest areas on I-5, including the two north and south Baldock rest areas on I-5. And they are very interested in doing this in cooperation with the communities that would be served by visitors stopping at those rest areas. So the first meeting about that is tomorrow. So none of these things, other than what's going to happen at the Forest Service, are really on paper as definites at this time. So given that we could have a way to intercept and connect with visitors on I-5 as they're coming into Clackamas County, and that we can have a place up on Highway 26 to connect with visitors that are up in that part of the county, we then, as this task force, looked at the 205 corridor and where did we need to be situated to serve visitors along that corridor. We've talked about a number of things, but we always come back to the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center, and mindful that our discussions were happening sometimes prior to and in the middle of when things started to change at the end of the Oregon Trail. But because transient room tax funds built the building that is on that campus that is used as the visitor center and the gift shop, because there is great parking there, because the Amtrak station is across the street, because we understand improvements will happen to the 213-205 interchange, it seems like the best place to easily get off of 205 and get information about not just Oregon City, but all of Clackamas County. So the task force left it with a recommendation that the first option we should investigate along 205 was the Abernathy Green into the Oregon Trail, and that we should come to the city to see if there was interest, desire to help make that happen there. We know we have to fit into whatever other plans you have for that space. We have not said yes or no, it's a definite, but we are willing to sit at the table with you and talk about it. What we envisioned was not just the typical visitor information center. We started calling it a destination visitor center, a place that down the road would actually become an attraction unto itself, that you might go there because of the experiences you could have at that location. We talked about the opportunity on the grounds. There's already a beautiful garden of native plants. We talked about what if some grapes could be planted there so a visitor could actually see and get an idea that they might want to go out to wine country. We talked about the oxen or some kind of animals being there to be another attraction. We talked about a a audiovisual presentation that would knock your socks off and make you get in your car and go out and explore all of the area. We talked about it being a place where you got your tickets. So if you were wanting to go skiing, you got your lift tickets there. If you needed the forest pass, if you needed to buy the Historic Oregon City pass, whatever it might be, theater tickets, whatever, there would be a way to buy them there. It would also be a place that you could start tours from, be they in a motor coach, on bike, on foot. We also saw it as a place that could showcase things that are made in Clackamas County, and the idea that perhaps Bob's Red Mill, Dave's Killer Bread, some of the chocolates that are made in Clackamas County, there wouldn't be a retail store as such, but they would give you enough of a taste that you would want to go out and do some more. So that's kind of our vision. We're very interested in working with you, but I do need some kind of a timeline, because if this is going nowhere, I got to go back and look at Plan B and what other locations there are along 205 that might fit our needs. If you're going to go forward with it, there's some patience to when it can actually be realized. We are in the same difficult economic times as everyone else. Our collection of room tax last year was 12% less than it had been the previous year, and I've budgeted this year that we'll be another 12% down over last year. So it's not like we have an excess of funds to spend. Back 10 years ago when TDC embarked on regional visitor information centers, they've been saving money up in a reserve fund for a number of years to be able to make happen what happened at Wilsonville and at Welch's and at Oregon City. So it's not like there's a pot of money sitting there ready to just deliver to someone. But I believe the trend with visitor information centers is about partnership. And I encourage you to stop at what's called the Travel Cafe in Salem, across from the courthouse on High Street. They moved from Mission Mill to that downtown location. They totally paid for everything that happens in that travel cafe through cooperative partnerships. There are 1, 2, 3, at least 4 big flat screen TVs on the wall, all purchased by Chemeketa Community College. All of the wiring was done by Comcast. The Salem Hospital pays a monthly fee to Travel Salem, which is my counterpart there in Salem, so that they host meetings in their conference room for new staff or new prospective staff to get them wowed about Salem as a place they might want to live. So I think there are lots of possibilities, and you can't think of this just as that typical visitor center with a desk where you walk up and someone hands you some brochures. We were thinking way outside of the box and what we hoped could happen there.
And it was from what Linda outlined, that budget I gave you, and that is really a wag at the most part. But you can kind of see what, just guessing at what some of those revenues, the one big piece there that I think you've made a decision was that OCCIT money, so you might have to take that out of there. But and then also looking at the expenses, that's on that following page. That still was a bit of a deficit because, again, looking at the entire center, and you got to add in some deferred maintenance, how we catch up on that, and I think I've kind of covered that. But with some of these other proposals you have, you may add some other attractions, and again, maybe these numbers are light, maybe they're heavy, I don't know, but it gives you a way that you might be able to put together something where you can actually not only run the VIC, but by doing that also operate that center with whatever else you want to bring in there.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. In my mind, there's some, I think we need to establish a process if we wish to do something there, or if we want to contract it out, then we do that, but which is also a process. And then, secondly, do we want to partner with the TDC so that they know whether to move on or not? And then also, I lost my train here. Yeah, what we want it to be. Shoot, just a minute. Yeah, no, I know. Where was I? I was thinking about something else, and then it went off. Yeah, the process, the partnering, I had a third one too, but,
Facility?
oh, no, policies, that we could set policies, I think, as part of the process. For instance, anything that goes down there has to be either revenue neutral or has to pay for it. It has to be a revenue generator. So I think that certainly could be a guidance for us as we move forward with a process. And again, in my mind, a process can occur without investing in, as the library and the police department are doing, either a firm or a consultant that's going to guide it. Because it's not something that I think any of our department heads, at least I haven't seen any identified person that can come up and do that. So that individual will have to, work with, and in my mind, again, this is just the proposal that I had kind of laid out, we'll have to work with a steering committee of some kind or a board that does the refinement. If we want the decisions to stop here, that's fine, but I just can't see it working without a committee of some kind. So anyway, now, it's on the table, so what would you like to do with this process and to get to where we want to go? Jim?
I just have a question for Linda. Linda, what's the Board of County Commissioners' view on all of this been as far as your proposal? Has that been discussed with the BOCC?
The proposal has not been presented to the county commissioners. It's at the Tourism Development Council level, which is the advisory board on tourism to the commissioners. Until we had more information about these partnerships, there didn't seem to be any point to take them forward to the county commissioners.
I was just curious about the sequencing of that. Thank you.
Okay, others? Rocky?
Well, that's one vision of the interpretive center, so I think we need to look at all of them and then come back to that.
Or, process, I think, is, I think process
I mean, we're going
is
to go
key.
through each of these, I'm assuming.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I guess you guys have to tell me, because I don't know that here that we want to, do we want to set the vision here, or do we want to?
Well, I think that was the whole point of this meeting.
I think, well, if that's the direction, fine, but I think easier for us is to determine a process. Because, again, I don't think it's something that we want to be hands-on on.
I don't think you can determine a process before you know all the options that are intertwined with it and all the possible partners. To just hear from one vision is not going to make a decision, or is not going to allow me to make a decision on how we progress in a process.
Oh, I know. I think
so. Then we need to talk about them all.
Jim, when we're talking about all, could you tell me the list that you'll be specifically?
Well, actually,
I mean, we have a proposal here from.
Well, just a sec. With all due respect, those are the ones that were given me. I wanted you to see those, and I also have many people who called at home that have their vision, and so I think, in my mind, I don't know that we want to choose the vision. I would really like to spin that off to a group that sits down, and so that they can solicit real proposals. Because these are just ones that have come in as we have a vacant space. So I think that we to keep the partnership with the county on the table or not is one piece, and then I think to determine a process. Do we want to hire someone and put a committee together that's going to be the steering committee for the next step at the interpretive center? Or, I mean, I don't think I really want to get into who's the best.
Yeah.
What's the best vision without knowing what the field is?
Well, I guess then my problem is that that's something you should have stated before we had a presentation by one of the individual partners. I mean, this purpose was to discuss all the options. And if we were only going to discuss one tonight, then I don't really see what the purpose of this meeting was. If the purpose of this meeting was to decide the direction, then we didn't need a presentation from Linda Bell about one of the possible potential projects. I don't understand. It was very clear to me in the last few meetings that all of these topics were going to be discussed. We all talked about that numerous times, or else I wouldn't have committed to making sure that minutes from other meetings got in, or none of these. Why would all these things be given to us tonight if these weren't going to be talked about?
Well,
Why are people in the audience here to talk about it?
There's two issues, again.
Apparently, I've gotten completely wrong idea what this meeting was about.
No, you have to keep two things separate. One is the EOT, and I think all of
The visitor center.
those things, those proposals tie into that. The other is the visitor center, and you do have a shorter winter, whether you want that, which it doesn't have to be a piece of it.
Right,
But that's one thing, it could be part of everything else. So
The problem is Linda Bell tonight was not discussing just the visitor center. She was talking about the whole campus, individual buildings.
No,
She was
I'm sorry,
talking
I
about
was
the
not-
garden, she was talking about video presentations, which would have been in the middle, I mean, so it was broader than just that building.
the visitor center, the only purpose is the visitor center could have other features that helps us run the EOT, no matter whatever else you want to do with it. Because part of whatever you have to do here is it has to generate revenue to pay for itself.
Then I guess I'm completely lost.
Well, I think what has happened in the community, of course, is there's an opportunity. And so people are coming out of the walls, at least in my world, to give us ideas. I mean, everywhere I go, I get someone that comes up and presents me an idea. And the last one was a miniature golf course there with an Oregon Trail theme. You know, that people have an opportunity to talk about that. I mean, and so in my mind, the job that I have to do as a policymaker is to set processes in place that include the community and to put policies in place. So, I mean, one policy can be that it has to maybe it has to generate revenue, or maybe it so that when we spin it off to the community group and the consultant that we would hire, or operations manager, whatever we would hire to do that it has some parameters around which we would like that to operate. Because I don't think that it's my job to determine which of these ideas we go with, but it's to determine how we make the decision to do that.
If it's not your job to determine which direction we go, how come you are only selling one proposal, and every chance we get, the only discussion is about this one topic? So
the visitor
it's
center
very,
piece.
Doesn't that
I'm
presume that the
on to
visitor
what's
center
going
is a
on
piece?
here,
No,
and I'm
it-
not going to be.
It has been a piece, and I think what we need to determine is whether it still stays on the table or not as we go forward. I mean, you can certainly say that it's, that it needs to be in the whole picture, but
Okay, well, in that case, I will say that I have no problem with a conversation continuing with the county as long as they know that theirs is not the only plan, and they are not going to direct where this city goes and what this city does with that building. It's our building, and this commission is going to direct it as a whole.
What she just...
So,
That's the information I need. That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry.
because if I
didn't say
come
that.
to another meeting and have a plan proposed already, and then a task force is proposed the next week, and they're all determined already, then there's no point in me being here.
No. We have no...
And I've been there before, Alice, with you.
With what? What are you talking about?
Oregon 150, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, I thought that was pretty successful, but...
Well-
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
They
I
were,
guess there's two things. One is, I don't think anybody's going to argue the fact that the Abernathy Green is a very important historical place for Oregon City.
Right.
The fact it's a national register designation at that particular site, it makes sense. It's a gateway because it was originally a gateway. And that's where most of the people that were going to go into the Willamette Valley, which is almost all of the original settlers in Oregon City, came through. The question you're proposing is are we going to work out in a partnership? I don't think we're approving any proposal. I mean, first of all, we can't.
well, the whole concept of this work session was to discuss this building. We have yet to discuss it. We've been handed copies of plans from the mayor and from TDC, but we have not once as a council decided what we want to do with this building or the possible options for the future. And my question is, if this isn't the work session to do it, then when are we going to do it?
Okay, so we're talking about the TDC building itself.
No, I'm talking about the interpretive center, which
Okay.
is what is on our agenda, not
The whole space, the whole place.
And look at your agenda. It's not the visitor center. It's
Nope.
the end of the Oregon Trail. So
It's a piece of
so
it.
how are we not talking about it?
Well, I think that we're not going to get to the answer without a process. So I think, I
And
would
how
really...
can we get a process when we don't know who's involved?
That's our choice.
Because you've already made up your mind.
I've not made up my mind. I am putting proposals on the table.
It's pretty obvious.
Well, okay, then take my proposal and rip it up. I mean, the way I
Well, that's what you're
work.
doing to all these other ones, essentially, because people in the community feel like there was the Oregonian article, there was a lot of other, all that this group is talking about is this one plan. And a lot of people in this community have told me they don't feel that there's any option or discussion for future plans for that building because the city's already made a decision. We haven't made a decision.
You made no decision.
Okay? But the city keeps pitching this idea. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be part of the discussion. But everything needs to be part of the discussion. My question is, if it's not happening tonight, when is the discussion happening?
This is it. This is it.
Then let's
And-
talk about it.
Okay, because in my mind, how are we going to get to the decision point? I mean, I think that we need a task force to look at all of these options.
Exactly. And how do we know what the task force is unless we look at all the proposals and include everybody?
Well, that's the task.
That would be the task force job, just like any other task force we have. I mean, I proposed a
think
group of people,
I
and
think my concern is this past task force that have happened in this city and who's been included and the direction that they go.
well, we all have an opportunity to give input on that. I mean, that's why I put the proposal on the table for us to look at, what, is this not the way you want to go? I mean, the decision
did we really
needs to be
put
made.
this on a work session agenda to be handed the same proposal that you gave us a month ago and that's it?
We haven't moved
Why
beyond
are we
it.
sitting here?
We haven't moved beyond that. Daphne?
Okay, from my understanding tonight, Miss Bell is here because they have been partners there, they've had a business agreement with us, and now the facility is closed. She needs to make a business decision whether she should go ahead or walk or find somewhere else. So that is the only reason I see her here. Now, it's one of our choices is the revenue that center brings. Okay, we can tell her tonight to walk, because we have not determined a process, but please note that we are throwing away X thousand of dollars and a partial operator, so, in which maybe the community wants and maybe they don't want. But I agree that we need, because look at us right now, we can't, am I, what's the word, am my qualifications to figure out what the best use of that facility is? And you want to be fair to the community and let them have their input, so let's set up a process where everybody can be involved.
And
And criteria of how to make a
agree.
decision.
But the problem is the last several months that we've been or the last month that we've been talking about this meeting, it was not pitched as a work session to discuss whether or not we were going to continue with just the tourism center. We knew that was going to continue. We know that's an important thing. This has always been a discussion on the agenda for the interpretive center building as a whole, not just the visitor center. Okay? If you look on the
It
agenda.
is. It is.
And now what you're
No one's
saying is we're only
disagreeing with
talking
you.
about
No.
the visitor center and whether it's going to go forward. We already know that that's probably important and it's going to go forward and that should be a...
We've never said that.
We've not.
We've never said that.
So now we've discussed the visitor center. When are we going to talk about the rest of the building? Because that's what's on the agenda.
Okay, may I just pose a question?
Yes, you may.
Is there an agreement that the tourism center be part of this overall package, and its probable location would be there if we can get the support for it? Does everybody agree to that?
Well, okay, my opinion number
Well,
In the building that it currently is in.
Yes. Now, it could possibly expand, but that's
Right,
part of a
that's-
decision process.
Right.
So,
There are, though, with the visitor center, if you look at that, too, there are some things that they need if it is going to be there, and we'll have to kind of figure that piece out.
Yeah, so there's some planning that goes on.
And
Okay.
I think,
ahead.
if I could, just for process, if each commissioner has some things that they need to discuss or some proposals about what we do, I think you ought to put those on the table this evening.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, I proposed a revisioning committee, which to me was to revision the interpretive center.
I'm
and
assuming that the stack of proposals are not just from me. I mean, there's stacks of them here, and there's people
Yes.
in the audience that have proposals.
Yes.
So if we're not talking about them tonight, why was they given them?
Well, this is a damned if we do, damned if we don't thing. Those have been the ones that have come in. We have done no solicitation for anyone else, and in fairness,
Which means if you did, imagine how many you'd have.
Exactly.
correctly.
Yes.
But I felt it was important that we
Well,
share the
I'm glad
ones
that's
that,
happening.
I felt it was important that we share the ones that have come in with the commission, just to give you an idea of what has come in the door and what possibilities may be. In talking with the visitor center, you've got to make a decision, and you need to make some decisions about how that operates. If you want to expand those operations, as Linda was talking about, that helps that center, no matter what else you do with it, is those possibilities there? Because, again, one of the things you have to do is how do you balance that overall budget? And the big part of that is getting that building up to speed and keeping it there. I think some of those that have come in are very interesting, but there may be more out there that we haven't even heard of, and I think when you open that up, you may find a way that this thing does pencil.
And one reason you have those is that one of the philosophies that I have as mayor is that I try to pass on information that I have that you don't, and so that's the reason I had Larry staff copy those for you tonight, because I had those, and I thought that you would want to know about them, that they existed. Because, again...
We just don't want anyone else to know about them.
Well, it's, again, how do we get to the decision? I mean, in my mind, if we're going to hire someone to assist us, it has to be a group that they work with. And to me, it's a slotted revisioning committee, or I don't care what you call it, whatever the committee is, the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center Committee, but whatever it is. And that is the committee, in my mind, that sets goals. I mean, maybe if we want to set the goals, that's fine too. But but we need to give them some kind of direction so they can get their arms around some proposals. And again, I would envision setting some policies for that, or framework maybe for that committee, so that as they begin that revisioning process for what to do with that amazing site. And I'm not talking about there certainly should be some professionals on that committee from outside the community, but certainly it's Oregon City's decision, and we should retain, I think, the final thing. But I don't think around the table tonight that we're going to come up with the prevailing vision necessarily.
Well,
Doug?
no, the purpose of this work session was to start discussing in
Process.
the community what the options were.
And I think how we get to that. Doug?
First of all, you're very involved in it, and I would have no problem if we put together that you'd be one of the people on the committee. I think the thing that causes a great deal of angst on my part, frankly, was your statement that the TDC says it's broader. It's not heritage. We're going to drop heritage from the discussion because that doesn't sell.
No, I didn't say that.
You made that statement
Right.
that
Yeah,
the
that's
TDC was talking about it. When it comes to a visitor center,
Not just heritage.
it's not just heritage.
Yeah.
But the point is, the heritage piece is very important to Oregon City.
Absolutely. I
And
totally
so,
agree.
I mean, that's got to be understood at the very beginning.
But that would be one of the policies.
And that needs to be one of the policies. The fact that the visitor center is going to be talking about all kinds of destinations, we understand that. I mean, that's clear. And how, and maybe you have other ways in our area where you can describe where you go to as we work this out. And I think that is a function of a committee. I didn't think we were going to pass on any of these proposals. For one thing, I saw one here that sounded very intriguing, but I didn't see any experience associated with that specific activity. And so I think you're quite right. We put together a task force. I think we need somebody to facilitate, and I suppose that's going to be a professional consultant. And that's the kind of direction I'd like to give, but I think there's a clear understanding that TDC has to recognize that the heritage piece is probably the strongest thing that Oregon City has in terms of attracting tourism. The waterfront is part of it. I mean, yes, we've got a nice riverfront, but Milwaukee's developing one. There are other communities that have better parks on their waterfront than we do. So that's not that. The major piece here that holds us really in distinction is the reason that people came here in the first place. And I think one of the directives that needs to come out of it is, in fact, introducing people to the falls and the places to go that are tied to our heritage. So I think it is a very important thing. I think the TDC recognizes, no, it's not the only thing. Of course, there are many things that Clackamas County has to offer. But I think you do have to put forward a task force. I think based on the tremendous interest you have and also the your various activities, Commissioner Smith, that I would hope that you would be on that particular committee.
Okay. Are we headed toward a committee, or, I mean, again,
We're headed toward how much money is the facilitator going to cost?
And
That would be the
Are
next
we
step.
willing, are we willing to do that? Because
I'm
I
not
think
willing
we're
to spend money on something that we don't need to spend money to decide. We can.
Okay, okay, if you tonight were to have a proposal, then, that we didn't have to spend money on, what would it be? So I'm having trouble understanding how you're going to get to the decision.
Well, I think it's a community process with all of these proposals.
Who runs the community process?
I think we can find people to do that. I'm just sick of spending money on consultants for, I mean, we're wasting so much money in this town. I have a real problem with that.
I think one of the problems in finding somebody to do it, it's going to be somebody that probably has their own vision of what's going to happen, and that's one of the reasons that you hire a consultant. I think it's be very difficult to identify somebody that, well, obviously we want somebody that's not completely neutral. They're interested in getting this thing forward. That's one of the primary ways of doing something, and that we have somebody that can sort out all of these things. I mean, I just remember the tensions and the various visions that were coming out as part of the process for developing the master plan for the Beaver Creek area. There are a lot of diverse interests there, and if you had brought in an individual that had their own interests there to begin with to try to piece something together, I don't think we would have got anything that would have had the almost strong backing that we had on that particular concept plan. And I think that's why you need somebody that's a kind of a neutral force that can pull these entities together.
That's what
and I think it's
consultants
something you
do.
have to pay for, frankly.
Yeah. And that's what consultants do. I mean, there are
Yeah.
many, actually, I've talked with people, there are unemployed consultants right now that are very, very skilled with both public processes and with management issues, and could sort out, the policies we would develop, as well as the community process, and, I think could do it very well. Daphne?
With all respect to the community, our own community, and ideas generated within the community, if we get this consultant to help us figure this out, it might go out to a more national or West Coast media, where that you might get some bigger organizations in here that maybe can come help us run it. I mean, just like the picture of one of the ideas here. So there might be more people broader than Oregon City within itself that can help us with this.
And I think
it's a special place.
Well, and I think
And
that's
we
kind of
just
my
don't
point.
own, we don't own, well, I mean, it is our history, but the history is broader than us.
Right.
And we might find someone that's versed in running heritage.
And I think one of the issues will be, how do we vet an idea? And to me, a committee and a consultant can vet an idea and ask the hard questions. Where have you worked before? What's your resume? How can
Yeah.
you make it a profit center? How will it work with the public? Or how does it bring up heritage? Or how does it bring tourists to town? Or whatever the goal is. But, I mean, I'm just concerned about all of those things, or doing it on our own or doing it in an ad hoc way. I mean, consultants, we use them in the city a lot because they are the creative energy that has one focus. Larry has a zillion focuses. Our department heads all do, and so I think that's the value of a consultant. Is it's just that person or organization becomes a specialist for us, working in our behalf.
Okay, so that I'm clear on this, we are, as a group, giving an okay, really, to continue discussions with the county in the future of the visitor center. And separately from that, or in conjunction with that, following through on hiring a consultant or task force or whatever to create essentially a master plan for the entire center, which may or may not include, or may include more of or less of the visitor center. But I don't want in any way of those two things to be linked together in the sense that I think it's very clear that the visitor center plays an important role in the future of that building as a whole, but not the whole building.
So let me recap what you said. So really, we did not say the visitor center has any part at this point, is what you're saying. So they are just one of the many factions that might be considered. So at this point, we're going to hire a consultant. We're going to set up a framework where there are the goals involved, such as do we want it to, pencil out, or what proportion heritage would have, or if the tourism center. So at this point, we're just, okay, well, I'm not hearing him say that. So that's what I'm hearing from you, is that the tourism may or may not be a piece. But right now, the tourism center, so Ms. Bell tonight.
Okay, that the visitor center, is a crucial piece, and I think in the success of the whole thing in the future, but not necessarily is the visitor center the whole building. That the visitor center is possibly use of that building, and will probably continue with the building, but that that the visitor center is a component of this whole master planning, but the master planning isn't a master plan for this one vision.
Okay, so then is it the sign-off tonight for Miss Bell, then, that we can...
We have two discussions. One is with the county about the operation of the visitor center. The other is this process to define the overall plan for the operation of the
And how the visitor center would fit in with that, space-wise, mission-wise, all of it.
Jim?
I hope this question isn't taken as sarcasm, because it's not supposed to be sarcastic. But I do want to ask, regarding our consideration of a consultant, I want to ask the Commission, what does the Commission feel that we got as far as information and policy by the AKT report that we didn't get if we hadn't spent the money? I mean, we knew CHP was in trouble financially. We spent this money on the AKT report that kind of confirmed what we already knew. I don't really know what the community gained by retaining that firm and having this consultant's report done. And it's not a sarcastic question. I just wonder what the Commission feels and how that informs what we think a consultant would get us if we moved ahead with yet another consultant on this.
If I might.
Doug?
First of all, I had problems with the report. I found computational errors in it, which I shared with the people. It really was, I think, a bit of a different thing. It wasn't really pulling stakeholders together. It was telling us that, you're right, the operation wasn't working. However, what it did tell us, it was never told us before, even that number that was originally proposed for the number of visitors to make it work wouldn't make it work. That is, you could bring it up to that number that was originally proposed to making it a self-funded organization, and it wouldn't have been. That number wasn't even sufficient.
And it had to go up to like 450,000.
Yeah, so it's there were these projections of what you required to make it work before, and that was too small. And the point is, really, it suggested to us, we can't fund that kind of activity anymore and expect to get anything out of it in the way it was formatted, and we need to really look at things differently. I agree. We did not get what in terms of the additional expenditure that occurred. Them coming here and talking to us for a couple hours at that price, I thought that irritated me. I was expecting to see a PowerPoint presentation or something that was far better than us having the document in front of us in itself. I don't think we got our money's worth in the presentation that was made. But I do think the one valuable thing that came out of it was the fact you're not going to get, you can go and try to focus on the kind of thing you wanted to, and even if you got the number of people you talked about originally, which we were far from, it still was going to be a money-losing proposition. And I think it indicated to us we've got to go a different direction, and I think that's what we're exploring here. But I was not satisfied with that report, and I'll just tell you right now I wasn't satisfied with that report.
Larry?
I think Commissioner West probably wants to...
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Larry, I'm going to usurp you because
That's fine.
Commissioner Nocita asked with the Commission. And so I wanted to say the same thing. Yes, we knew they were in trouble, so I got that Wow, no surprise with the report. But actually, I don't even know if I can say any more better than what Doug said, because it identified how much money it would take to make it successful, and whether that CHP was a viable organization to run it. So it identified a lot of things. In other words, it shut the door on that, and now here we are opening to that shut the door. This next group will open the door to the new policies there. How about that?
Expectation pulls people together to talk about it. That wasn't what this other committee was directing.
So you were right. We knew that, but we didn't know how much it would cost to run exhibits, and I had no idea with the numbers.
And the maintenance, the backlog of maintenance, I think, was also good to have that.
Maintenance, visitors, and
Let me put it in a little
exhibits.
different can, but it's the same message. Anytime you have an issue like that in the community, it's not that you don't know that an issue exists, and you have some inkling about what that issue is. What that study did is it did give you the depth of the issue that you faced. It also gave you a history of what led us there, so hopefully we can take a different course. It also has given you detailed information to help you explain to the community what your next steps are and why you're taking those. Without that, you could tell them there's a problem, but you can't help lead the community to a new horizon if you can't explain the issue
Of
and why
something
you're
would work.
doing what you're doing. That's what it gave you. That's what the whole purpose of the thing was. And in regards to the report, that would have fallen on deaf ears if I would have given that report. So somebody had to do something.
Well, we paid an extra $2,500 for them to come give it, actually.
We did.
Yeah, we did.
I would have preferred you giving it.
Okay, so the question is, how are we going to move forward on this? Because to let it fester, I think is not a
I think Commissioner Smith actually gave us a focus that we do want the tourism
Visitor
center
center.
as a partner in this. That they will probably identify other things that they have to do, and maybe their footprint expands in the process, but they're part of the partnership that we're seeking to develop, and this kind of however this is, whether it's a task force or however it's put together, gets a broad representative of interest in there to put together what that vision is going to be and how it's going to be put together. And I think that's basically what Rocky was saying.
Let me raise one aspect that has to be addressed with the visitor center piece, and it's in that memo, mainly because I just like running into walls, I guess, is why I bring these things up. But one of the things that if the visitor center is going to go forth and be there is that there be other staff presence on that site. Now, once we develop a master plan and everything else takes place, you'll have that, but that could take a while. So if we're going to continue to operate the VIC there, we need to figure out what other presence is there, and that one of the discussions is should we approach the chamber about officing there as well. It also has to do with the
Why are you bringing another proposal
Yeah, see, I
out?
think that all should
was
be,
not-
I think that
So
all should be
you're
from under the
just
rubric.
contradicting yourselves right now.
No, what you may do is if we can't bridge that in the short term, you may not have a VIC there, and once you lose that opportunity, you won't get that again. That's why I'm bringing it up. You can be mad at me, I'm just raising some issues you need to think about.
Yeah.
Doug.
First of all, the chamber was looked at, I think, as a management piece of that early on, and then the EOTech was actually brought in, or they were proposing to be there, one of the two. I don't know which it was.
Long time ago.
That was a long time ago. Yeah, I'm talking about years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. But we actually, when we were looking at the Carnegie management, the chamber also expressed interest in managing it, and it wasn't willing to take on the kinds of responsibilities that we expected them of it. I think if that proposal is going to come forward to us, it has to become a specific proposal on how it's going to operate, because the chamber is actually, I think, stretched to capacity. The visitor center has to be open at times that the chamber doesn't currently operate, and these were kinds of things that the chamber was not willing to
these are details,
responsibility.
though.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, when you looked at the chamber as a potential partner at the Carnegie Center, they really were not willing to take on the kinds of responsibilities that we wish them to take on. They said they couldn't do it. So I'm not sure how viable that would be anyway.
All I'm saying is the Visitor Center to operate has indicated, I think, 4 criteria that they need. They need some additional staff presence. They need someone to pick up the garbage and do the maintenance, which we have undertaken to do at our
Just to the
facility
end,
anyhow. They've talked about maintenance of the 800 number.
But you see, I think that's sort of separate. I mean, if the TDC wants to bring in the chamber to assist that, I think that's their issue, and they can do so. But I don't know that it's part of the overall picture of the whole overall management of whatever goes in there.
Let's ask for a response.
Yeah.
Larry is correct. We continued right now on a month-by-month basis the contract with Clackamas Heritage Partners. That is not something we wish to do, nor that I understood the city wanted us to do either. But we have to have 2 people there at all times. It is just not safe for a single individual to be in that building by themselves. So we are reluctantly operating on a 5-day-a-week schedule instead of a 7-day-a-week schedule. I can't do that and not have that telephone answered because it is our 800 number for all that we publicize for people to call who want information. So I thought we were going to be looking at a short-term solution of how we keep that visitor center open 7 days a week. And I don't think it's a good idea to hire a county employee, and I understood it wasn't a good idea to hire a city employee because it takes 2 people, as I said, more than 2 people if you spread it out to the hours.
Linda, I don't know if that's the I don't think any of us have a problem with that. You're talking about the management of the center, and that's your responsibility. If you can work out.
But I don't own the building.
Yeah.
And so if to bring another tenant into that building, I didn't feel that I had the authority to do
The
that.
other issue you have right now is that is a contract with CHP. And we can continue to see if they left alone again, if we can meet these other criteria. If it is not CHP, then whose employee is it? If it becomes an employee of the city, because again, they're just pass-through dollars, that is going to increase the cost because that becomes a city employee, and you're going to have, all the AFSCME contract provisions that are going to be a piece of that. That's going to have to be factored in. And then the question, these other things that they need, and this other process could take months to develop. I don't know if TDC is patient enough for us to define these other pieces over several months.
I suggest that we bring to the commission the decision to let the TDC continue in the operation of that building, and then they need to find out the partner that they need to use to make that work.
TDC is a pass-through of the dollars. Somebody has to become the employer of the employee.
It's best for the nonprofit.
And it's either going to be somebody like contract with CHP, or it becomes city or
the Chamber
county.
of Commerce or others, or it becomes a city. But anyway, they need a partner. Jim.
I don't like doing this in the middle of an agenda item, but my brain is fogging up,
Yeah,
and
we
I
need to
really
have a
need a
break.
break. I don't like having guests come and want to speak to us and not giving them an opportunity to speak also. So irrespective of whether we figure this out tonight, I would like to give the
Have an
gentleman from the railroad to come and speak to us, but I really need a break right now.
Sure. Let's do that. Let's break till 25 till then. Thank you.
He went outside for a minute, so.
Jim did?
Yeah, stepped outside. Let's go ahead and start.
Okay. Yes, let's, where'd you come from? Were you under the...
From outside. He popped in from outside.
Were you under the table?
He's the wind.
All of a sudden you appeared.
He was over here.
I'm glad we didn't say anything bad.
That's right.
Okay, we are now...
Since your mic was on.
Especially. We are now back in session and continue our discussion on the process to determine the future of the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center, the Abergavenny Green site. So it appears that we're circling around, so may I test the water, that we're circling around a revisioning committee, or whatever we want to call it, a task force, whose sole job will be to vet and determine, along with the facilitator, a game plan for the interpretive center. I assume you wish the final decision to be with us, but so we need to probably determine, again, get an idea of the framework, but we can at least pitch this idea to staff so they can come back with us and get another meeting so that we can...
Schedule it for April.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
No, we'll get it back soon.
Okay, and if you look at the memo that I had brainstormed some ideas for a committee. So give your input on that, and then how quickly can we hire somebody to do this and find out someone who does this work, and then get going on this. We've had way too many sites vacant, and I would really love to have our target be to try to get something on the site by the high visitor season. But I know that, again, floating out there are many, many ideas, including, farmers market. Someone talked to me on Saturday. So then on another track, we also need to work with the TDC on any, staff needs to bring to us any decision package that needs to be made regarding city's involvement with the visitor center. Understanding that visitor center, and again, visitor center can have two meanings. It can be a place, if one of our pieces of framework is we want it to be a place where people from outside the community can come and learn things, and that's also a visitor center. So we'll have to define definitions as well as. Okay, is there any dissent or different takes on the process that we're going to give to Larry to?
No, but Jim suggested we wanted the input from
yes,
people that
from other
came through
people.
here. And that's-
Yeah, right. Sorry, I forgot.
I'd like to...
Just a minute. Let's finish the discussion here first. I want to make sure we're
Okay.
got captured everybody's idea. Jim, you're next.
First of all, I am open to the visitor center as a component of this. I want to hear I want to be sympathetic to Linda and her timeline. I also am interested in Commissioner Smith in his idea about doing this without a consultant, just to kind of challenge the notion that that's always necessary. I do want to perhaps hear more from Commissioner Smith and see if he can provide us with some more detail on his vision for doing it without a consultant, or how much time it would take for that thought to be developed more. Because I am sympathetic to that as well.
I have no idea. Someone has to put this together. My frustration and concerns come from the fact that, one, I'm sick of us spending consultants and wasting money for various things. We've done it for so many projects in this city, and I'm not saying that sometimes we haven't hired consultants that have done good work and led us to great proposals, but man, they seem few and far between. And what bothers me, and I concede that it can't be done probably without someone, but I don't want that someone to be narrow-focused. I don't want that someone to, I don't want this task force to include a set criteria of these people and no one else. It can't happen. It cannot happen for this building. This is our building. This is our city's building. It's our community's building. The death of the interpretive center, albeit way too late, that, I'm surprised it lived as long as it did, honestly. And why was it never successful from day one? Because it never got the buy-in from this community. Not once did it. We have an opportunity now to not only, and the amazing thing is that we've only been talking about this for a week, and the piles of proposals are coming. This is because people are interested in this building. They have never been interested in this building before. And now they are. Now they are. And what I'm saying is if anyone in this city or this region wants to take the time to put a proposal together, then we better look at it. And this task force better look at it. Every single one. And if someone's going to take their time and effort to put a proposal together, then they should be on that steering committee. I don't care how big it is. But it's going to happen, and they have to have a voice just the same as everyone else. Because it has to be a broad vision, has to be a broad community, and it has to be a massive partnership for this to work. And we've been told that by the AKT report. So my vocalness about this is don't get narrowed into one direction, pitching one proposal, when only one proposal is not going to work. Okay? One proposal creates, oh gosh, what's that quote Thelma always says? Anyway, Thelma's awesome, and she knows so much about what she's talking about. We have to listen to all these.
Oh, I agree.
And so I don't want us to think for 1 minute that this task force is going to be 10 people or 15 people or 20 people. If someone wants to be on this task force, then they should be on it.
Well, if they're the right people. I mean, I think we have control
If they
over
have
who's going to be on it.
Be very careful about how you say that.
Okay.
But because if they have a proposal, I mean, if someone spends the time, hours even, to put a proposal together, they're not just a random person that's saying, oh, I want to, they have a vested interest.
Yeah.
And I think that even if each person that writes a proposal is not on the task force, their proposal better be looked at.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that's an opportunity. That's why I propose.
Let's not say we think. Let's say this. We're open to this, and we're going to let this community decide the direction of their building.
Well, I think that what you're talking about, exactly what I proposed, is that we need to develop the policies, the framework under which this committee works, and then, then we won't be disappointed.
Just a quick comment. When the Beaver Creek Concept Plan was putting together, there was a task force, but there's tremendous opportunity
Park
for
Place,
citizens.
too. Park Place, too.
Yeah, I didn't go to those. I mean, I was a member of the other one.
Yeah, both
so
of them.
I know how that one functioned. And there was a lot of community input. In fact, we had people sitting at various tables to put together various visions as to how that could happen. And the task force looked at all of these and went ahead and moved on it. So the opportunity is there where you get all the input and so forth. I don't know you can have an open-ended task force, but you can have a situation in which, in fact, everybody has input and is involved in the process.
And task forces can also do community, they can shop their proposals, they can shop the plan before it comes to us. I mean, there's many things that are typical activities of a task force. Phil, sure, come forward.
Sounds to me
You need to give your name, please. Oregon City resident.
Oregon City resident. You're talking really about, I think what Rocky is talking about is a sort of an RFP process. And you had an RFP for the library, the Carnegie Center, a few years ago.
That's likely what we'll do.
And if your consultant was tasked with developing an RFP or actually receiving proposals and evaluating them, that might get you where you want to go.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, any more input on this? And then if you've come to talk to us about that facility, please do.
William Gifford, still in Oregon City. Excuse me. I would hope that there would be an opportunity for this task force, since that's the phrase being used, to have the opportunity to look at a broader vision. Several people have talked about don't get caught up in the details, don't just look at one solution, but I'm suggesting at an even larger vision of incorporating the facility at the end of the trail with all the historic properties in Oregon City. We could look at Abernathy, we could look at the Ainsworth House, we could look at the end of the Oregon Trail, or the museum. We could look at all the historic properties in Oregon City to see how they can net together to make Oregon City as a whole an historic destination, not just the end of the Oregon Trail.
As was in the proposal.
Sounds like CHP. We need to start over.
Next.
Karen Morey, not a resident of Oregon City. I've been participating in a kind of a self-appointed community group that's come up with a lot of wonderful ideas, and some of the discussion at the last group was that may be a good core group for a task force, and I think I saw this coming. But I also think you're losing sight of something here that's important, which is a complete separate issue, and that is the staff down at the Visitor Center. I go down there, I've visited Kathy since the facility has closed. It is not safe for one person to be there alone. It is secluded, it is hard to get to, there's no visibility. So once this task force issue is settled, I think that there needs to be more of an answer as to how that's going to be staffed and how it's going to be staffed safely.
Thank you. Next, anybody else that wants to talk? You want to talk about choo-choo trains?
Yes. Talk about the trains. Honest Mayor, pleasure to
So
be
just
here.
briefly, yeah, you introduce yourself, please.
My name's Ron Schmidt with Custom Locomotives. We presented a little proposal.
We have it, too.
To Larry.
Yeah.
And I don't see what the problem is. I mean, I've been self-employed for 20 years, and I've seen good times and bad times, and this is a wonderful opportunity to get kids involved. And I've been doing tool and die work for about 20 years, and I started building these little trains like 3 years ago. And it really gives you satisfaction to put the whole locomotive in the train, and then I get to be the engineer, and I go out there and I give the kids a ride. They go crazy. And every time we go to the Oregon Trail Museum, it's pretty much empty. Now, my partner in Canby has a little train. His name's Leo Gary with Phoenix and Holly. They have a pumpkin patch. They get 40,000 people just for
Just in
the
October.
Halloween. So you guys are talking about you only get 30,000 the whole year? And okay, if we put a little train around the Oregon Trail and the Trail Museum, we could attract 50,000 people easy. And we'd like to take over and lease a facility and pay back 5% royalty to the city. So you're actually making money. I don't know how any other business operates that you have a budget. It's not a hole in the ground. You're actually making money. And if we're not making money, I think the whole vision is like skewed. Everybody's okay. Look at the zoo. The biggest moneymaker that the zoo has is a train. You go across the country,
Well, I don't think it's bigger than the elephants.
Oh, I'm telling you, the kids go bananas. We could do something so crazy and beautiful that would really attract the kids, 10, 12, and under, and you're actually going to make some money. And it's not going to cost you anything, and it's going to be a benefit for the whole community.
Wait, thank you. We've got your proposal, so.
Okay, thank you for
be part of it.
Your time.
Thank you. Daphne?
I'm sorry, I'm going backwards again. So where is the staffing piece for the extra person for the TDC falling into this whole conversation?
That's going to be something that Larry will work with the TDC on and bring back to us, the decision package.
Oh, okay. That's not going to wait till after...
No, it's not waiting till later.
No.
No, we're holding his feet to the fire on that. It's a decision that TDC needs to make, too.
Yes,
so
I mean, okay, good.
So that was a summary I made. Jim? I think Renee needs, Renee just did it. Okay.
All right. I would like to get some clarification regarding what we discussed at the OCCIT meeting about the immediate needs of the city to fund this facility maintenance-wise and we were considering using CCIT money, and we were also considering using income from the 3 properties in the urban renewal district. What is the relationship with that immediate facility maintenance needs and what Linda is discussing? Is that a separate decision? Can we make a decision, for example, tonight on, or get a discussion going tonight on whether we can use, there's a discussion about the $60,000 needed for maintenance. I think there was that specific figure was used somewhere.
I think that was actually for the consultants, the
No.
60,000.
No.
Well, if I could, yeah.
You're talking about, I think it's 80,000
80.
in there for maintenance. We have picked up some of the ground maintenance and all the piece that is going to be missing is maybe that higher level maintenance, and particularly beginning to address that facility and its needs.
Okay, facility manager, 80,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess one of the things I would like to do tonight is throw out I want to have a determination for
Funding sources.
Yeah, there has been. I've gotten some feedback from members of the public about the fact that it might be illegal or objectionable to use the rental income stream from the 2 houses on Tumwater and the rental from the Clackamas Landscape Supply to help maintain this facility. I don't know the answer to that question, and I want to see if we can get an answer to that question. My off-the-top, uneducated response was, well, it might be, because there's a question of whether you can use urban renewal for operations. But there's a distinction, I think, I don't know, there might be a distinction as to whether rental income from urban renewal properties is similarly restricted like TIF income is restricted. And I didn't know the answer to the question, and I think that's the kind of information
Can we
that
put
we
that in
need
the package?
for decision-making on all of this.
Yeah, I'm very interested in looking at those houses and that income that you guys all have been identifying, and so let's just make sure we have the answer to those questions. Others, questions put on the table. Rocky.
Just one last thing. That was the train proposal is just one of the amazing proposals that I think we're going to be able to see if we look at them.
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, the amount of people that are coming out of the woodwork to care about a building that needs some help for so long, I think is amazing, and I think that has to be encouraged. And I think that we need to just, encourage as many people to get a part of this process as possible. The fact that, just one of the other proposals in the community gathering is a living history school where we're teaching blacksmithing or, all these different kind of things. I mean, all these visions tie together.
Absolutely.
And if we figure out a way to listen to all these proposals that are amazing and connect them all together, nobody in the region could touch what we could do with that place. And that's what I'm looking for. And that's why I'm passionate about it. I do not want to see us drive one vision and cut people out because that has not worked in the past, and it's exactly why we're sitting here today, because this was not done in '96. And if it would have been done like I'm talking about, we would have probably, had a really amazing visitor destination here. We've never done it. And so I'm challenging this commission to support this and to support as many proposals as we can and make this a real community effort, not shut people out, not push your own agendas, not push your own visions. Let the community decide and let them drive it, because that's the only way it's going to work.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've been saying since day one. I want this to be a
I'm not
people
sure
place.
about that.
I have been saying that, because that's what I believe
I'm not sure about
passionately.
that.
Well, and it's maybe not what you heard, but I want it to be a people place.
Maybe I
and that's-
haven't heard it because it hasn't been said.
Absolutely it has, and that's what I'm saying throughout the community, is that, we want this to be a people place, and that's what I'm
glad you've
hearing.
changed
back.
your mind.
I didn't change my mind. That was my original proposal. Okay, let's move on then. Commissioner Neely and Commissioner Nocita asked that the task force, number F, item 3F, be moved over to the next work session. So let's talk about seismic codes.
Yes.
Guy, you want to come forward?
I'm going to ask Mr. Spurb to come up. You had asked about whether we wanted to increase our seismic codes for construction in the city, particularly related, I think, to public buildings, but in the city as a whole. And I wanted Mr. Spurb to kind of report to you on kind of where we're at, what the requirements are today, and see if this is something that you still want to look at, something more than this.
I think it is. Is your mic on?
No, I turned it off.
It has to be bright green.
Just push it.
Just push it.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay.
Are you with Verizon?
There you go. Okay. For the record, I'm Guy Spurb, the building official with the City of Oregon City. A little bit perplexed as to where to start with this, what the concerns were. I guess I will start out by saying that the International Code Council publishes a family of codes. Included in those codes are the International Building Code and the International Residential Code. Oregon looks and reviews at the International Code Council documents and makes amendments or modifications and adopts a statewide code referred to as the Oregon Structural Specialty Code. There's a consensus process with a number of different public hearings and committees and reviews and back to public hearings again. And then finally that code is adopted and then sent to publication and is adopted on a 3-year cycle. The City of Oregon City, once that process is adopted through the state, or concurrently with that, then the Oregon City Municipal Code is then modified to adopt the current edition of the Oregon's Residential Code, the Oregon Structural Specialty Code, and as well as other families of codes that we adopt. Included in the Oregon Specialty Code, the OSSC, are provisions within Chapter 16 that are utilized for seismic requirements for new structures. Also included in the Oregon Structural Specialty Code is a Chapter 34, and 34 is a chapter that deals specifically with existing structures. That's where we go when we're dealing with retrofitting existing buildings or additions or modifications to existing buildings. In those provisions, it says that if we're adding on to an existing building, that the new addition to the building needs to meet the current seismic provisions for this code. And the remainder of the building is not required to be upgraded because the code is upgraded every 3 years. And if we took that philosophy, then every 3 years we'd have to go back and redo every building to bring it up to current code provisions. And the code basically stays away from that because it's an unfunded mandate, and it's not practical to do that. So unless we affect the current structure by more than 10% or the seismic provision of that structure, it's allowed to. If I were adding on completely structural and independent building, then the new building needs to meet it and the existing building is fine. However, if I'm tying in to that existing building and I'm tying in such a manner that I'm affecting the seismic resistance or seismic strength of that building by more than 10%, then that provision of it needs to be brought up to current standards. Same thing is true on a modification to an existing building. If we're modifying it and we're modifying structural provisions, say we're tearing out the whole front wall of a building and we're going to put in glass in it, or we're going to put big openings or something that would affect the structural integrity of that building, then those provisions would have to be updated to today's standards. Am I making that pretty clear on that? So there is some leeway. I mean, it's that 10% is always kind of determined, but it's not typically an issue that is very contentious. I mean, it's pretty easily determined. If I have a building that changes from a dental office and it's
then becoming an attorney's office, and they move in and change some interior walls, as long as they're not doing anything to exterior, that building doesn't need to be brought up to seismic standards, because there's no modifications, or then those modifications are less than that 10%. So if they take that same dental office and they knock off the top floor of it and they add a second floor, well, then we're modifying, increasing the structural need or resistance to that building, and then obviously the new second floor would have to be brought up to current seismic, but also the bottom floor would have to be upgraded as well. So the other provision to that is the category of buildings and where you're not actually changing the use of a building, but the occupancy of the building. And occupancy of the buildings are defined if, let's say, we're going from a factory building to an office building to a factory, or if we're taking a factory and we're dividing up into residential condominiums or making flats out of it, like we saw in the Pearl District. That happened. Then we're changing occupancy categories of the building. And also you have seismic categories and occupancies of the building. 4 different classifications. You have essential facilities all the way down to like agricultural buildings that are basically exempt from seismic provisions, because the potential, or they all deal on a sliding scale of the amount of hazard to life. Agricultural buildings obviously, don't have a lot of risk involved in it compared to, let's say, schools or auditoriums or nightclubs, particularly when you get up into over 500 people. So I don't know if that gives you everything that you wanted. I'm certainly happy to try and answer any questions that you would have, but at that point, that's kind of an overview of
Okay, good. Learned some things. Rocky.
So when we're talking about, and this might be a city manager question too, when we're talking about, in terms of the police department, $1 million to maybe $2 million before we build a police station, that's because there would need to be changes with this building, but seismically, right? But what I'm hearing you say, Guy, is that that's not necessarily something that's done unless there's more of a 10%. I mean, if we could essentially keep this building the way it is, it's being half used as City Hall, half used as police. Well, maybe not half. But the police department's going to expand into this building. Police department has had to work with virtually nothing for ever.
Years and years.
And there's no doubt we need a brand new building. But what really do we have to change to this building meanwhile? I mean, can we make it do? Do we really have to change walls around? Do we really have to do that stuff? I mean, to me, it's going to be a hard sell to do that. If we can say, yeah, we've got this building, the police station has more space, they're utilizing the spaces that are laid out there, the offices that they're the best way that it works for us. The police department wins essentially a little bit, but I think that is kind of dealing with this building and using it the way it is until we build a new police station, I think, is what we have to do. I'm scared, I guess, of, and I've even heard this from police officers too, about the concern of if we put money into doing any real kind of changes to this building, even if it is $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million, that it just is going to be a hard sell. And the community is very knowledgeable about the needs of this police department. So my concern is if, putting $1 million into it really is, I mean, we can stay with this building the way it is, and it's grandfathered in, even if the police department takes the whole building, right? Unless we make some major modifications. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
And I would like to.
I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some costs, but I mean, are we talking about having to make this building fit these new codes unless we do some major changes? Or can we sit with this building for a couple years until we build a new police station that meets all the standards we need?
Okay. And I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Please.
It kind of gets back to what I was talking about on the change in occupancy to a higher degree. And police and fire stations are right up there with essential. Currently, and you're absolutely correct in that half the building is currently being utilized by the police department. So that's kind of a pre-existing non-conforming situation. And we have a mandate through state law that says that by 2022, all police and those essential facilities need to be upgraded to a seismic importance factor of 1.5. So that, but basically that means is that essential facilities need to be 1.5 times more seismically resistant than a standard office building. And I think that we talked about that at a previous meeting. But the police station use is being expanded. So we're currently utilizing half of the building, and we're utilizing the other half of it. Okay, so that puts the city and myself as a code official in somewhat of a precarious position. I think Commissioner Neely very much said it correctly, in that we need to be. I certainly, as an employee of the city, but also as a code official, need to be aware of what the best needs of the community are. And it then becomes a little bit like dancing on a razor blade.
Good image.
You got to be careful where you're stepping or where you don't step. Okay? So does it make sense for the community, and is it better for the citizens to dump $1 million into this building when we know that in 13 years we've got in a building that does not meet our needs?
Right.
So are we throwing money down the proverbial rat hole? Okay? In my professional career, I have a straight face test. And if somebody asks me a question, I need to be able to answer them with a straight face. And I need to be able to get up on the judge's stand and be able to answer that question with a straight face. And the direction that I gave the city was that if we need to modify the method in which the police department moves in to this existing portion of this building. So that, as the city manager indicated, that the least important or least essential functions are being renovated or being moved into this new portion of the building. Okay? We also need to develop a plan, because I understand that the city wants to build a new facility, but we also need to be able to put in place a time frame. In other words, a plan B. It's okay to just say that we can't move in there, but I need to be able to go with a straight face and say that we have a plan of action. And that's not just this project. I make those decisions routinely as a code official, and I'll give you examples. If we've got buildings downtown that are not sprinklered and they need to be sprinklered, we develop a plan. Everybody agrees to the plan. It's in place. We've got it in writing. Okay, first off, we got to put the FDC in this year. Next year, we'll sprinkler the basement. Next year, we'll sprinkler the first floor. Next year after that, we'll go do the second and third floor. So we've got a plan in place, and that's what Larry was talking about earlier, was that we let them move into this building because time is of the essence. I mean, we're going to be moving down there in November. We're going to be moving down there next month. We've got to be able to get something going. Okay, so then we move the non-essential, and I don't mean to categorize that any part of the police department is any more important than the other. But if we look at it realistically, if we're moving storage, if we're moving training, if we're moving records, evidence, that type of thing, that certainly is a function that can be. We could do away without that for a while. Okay, it's not like the force that's out there in the field. Okay, so then we implement a plan. Okay, if the architect, we required a structural analysis of this building to find out where we were, because we didn't have a line in the sand. We didn't know where this building was. So we required that. I thought the engineer provided an excellent report. It was just right down the line in what I thought it was as far as the structural weaknesses of this building. It was very comprehensive in that it listed in order, in a matter of priorities, as to which one of those deficiencies in this building needed to be taken taken place. He recommended that, I don't have it in front of me, but the first 3 of them be taken care of immediately. So I think in order to answer your question, I mean, I'm looking at this, Commissioner, as a big picture and the overall needs of the city. And it doesn't mean if we've got a time frame in place, if A doesn't happen, then we go to B. If B doesn't happen, then we're going to C. And that's all going to be down. And that's all going to be on the record. So I feel comfortable as a city building official in the direction that the city manager and the police chief, and we've all worked in cooperation with the engineering consultant from LRS, and I think we all feel very comfortable in the manner in which we're going.
Let me add to the questions and let you respond to this, because I think that may clarify the question I think Commissioner Smith is asking. If we were, though, to decide we're just going to move the police function in there, you would have a different concern.
Totally different.
Or if we were going to move these other quote-unquote non-essential function in there and just call that good and not do anything else with it, you would have a concern with it.
Absolutely, I would. I mean, we have a plan. We're going to implement a plan that's.
It has to be done a certain way.
Yeah.
Or we have to make renovations.
Doing nothing and having no plan is I can't do that with a straight face.
We'll continue.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get questions.
And I mean, that was the important question, but I have to touch on another topic because I think that's where some of my concerns lie with this. I can't help but feel that some of this discussion has already happened before. And what I mean by that is that we didn't find out about the critical facility code issues until the City Hall process was way started, as far as I know, right? Is that true? Or did we know about these code issues for critical infrastructure before we started the process with City Hall? Because as far as I've been hearing, that process with City Hall is where those issues came up. Did we know that we had to meet these criteria when we started the process of City Hall?
My recollection is it came up during the plans examination.
Right. And my reason that I'm stating that is if we really had a broad vision in the city of all the buildings, then we would have known that, and we would have been able to say, police station comes first, City Hall comes second, library comes third, in that order. But what we've done, and I'm using the word we without me implied in all because I wasn't part of this. We made the decision already. We've spent $6 to $7 million on a City Hall building, which had its own issues in itself. And we pitched this to the citizens by saying it's going to give the police department a lot more room. We didn't tell them that, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you another $1 million or $2 million when they get out. And then we're going to ask for a new police station. We didn't ask for that. And I think that's going to kill us. I mean, this community will do nothing but support the police department, but not when we make bad decisions like that. And I think that some of those decisions...
That's not a correct interpretation of what has taken place.
Well, I think that's debatable. But my question is, when did we know about the code requirements for essential facilities? And the answer is we didn't know that until the process was already started at City Hall.
It would not have changed the course that we have taken, because the course we have taken is based on the opportunities to solve the issues that lay before the commission, and this gave us a way to do that. Additionally, this isn't where we have begun the discussion of the need of a new police facility. We have been talking about that since I have been here. This has given us the opportunity to do that. This does give us the ability to provide more space for police, and no matter how we cut that, whether we're going to build a new facility or whatever, we're going to have to spend money here because you're still looking at a gap before a building can be built. And again, as the commission looks at it, you can look at fault, but the reality is this commission, past commissions, were faced with, because you've inherited a city that allowed all of its facilities to collapse at once with no attitude towards fixing those. We now have a plan to move this city forward.
My question, though, is how... No, and I'm really not doing that. My question really is, how are we going to sell it now? How are we going to sell it? Because I could sell the new city hall, the new police department very easily, but now I'm not sure that I could do it. Because that's the questions that are going to be asked. And if we can't answer them tonight with this simple question, then I think it's going to be a lot harder. Because we really have to push this. And nobody in the city is going to argue that we don't need a new police department. But my question is the process. It's going to be a tough sell.
Well, certainly.
And it's going to be a tough sell.
They would have already done it if it wasn't.
It would not be.
It's a lot easier before spending $7 million on a building that has its own issues when we could have known that we had to deal with the critical facilities issue first and then City Hall. But now we've flip-flopped it. And so now we're going to.
If we didn't have a new City Hall, we wouldn't be dealing with that issue.
What?
If we weren't relieving the space by having the new City Hall, we wouldn't be dealing with that
I
issue.
think you're misunderstanding.
You're missing the point.
I think
We would have had to have.
I think, if I'm following Commissioner Smith correctly, what Commissioner Smith is saying, if earlier on in the process, the essential facilities question was understood, the sequencing might have been different, whereby instead of City Hall leaving this building for the building on High Street, the police station would have moved into a seismically adequate space first.
Who knows?
Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know, but possibly. But my point is that the police department is obviously a priority over a new City Hall, and unfortunately, what's going to happen? We're going to have a nice new City Hall, which is great. But now we're going to have to sell the police department. I think selling the police department is easy, but it's not going to be easy when we have to first sell $1 million to $2 million to fix this building, and then sell a new police station. So my question is, how do we sell it?
Well, that's going to be part of the research.
Let me suggest a couple of things to you. And part of it, again, I think comes back to what I mentioned before, that there's a lot that needs to be learned here. You can argue that.
I really don't want to lecture. If you want to answer my question, that's fine, but I'm really tired of hearing the lectures.
Well, this whole approach is why you're going to be unsuccessful unless you begin to change your own rhetoric, is the first thing. But to begin with, it's a value judgment of this comes before that, how these things come together. The other thing you have to look at, City Hall or the city operations is a business. It doesn't matter what you do in police, library, fire, any of these things, if your business center is not functioning right, and a lot of the issues you point out were here. City Hall was an important facility that you needed to fix. Now, if you're going to sit and point out, we should have done this, we should have done that, this was wrong, that was wrong, you're going to be unsuccessful out of the gate. What you need to start talking about is the need that exists there and why we need to sell it.
How are we going to sell it?
That's how you're going to sell it. That's the rhetoric you have to have. What you're doing here is already working against what you're trying to do.
How are we going to answer the question?
That's what we just talked about.
Because you go back to the need.
Okay. And
That's
can
what
you
has to be
answer the
solved.
one question that I did ask, which was, when did we find out about the critical issues, critical needs, and critical infrastructure? When did we find out about that? After we started City Hall or before?
I'll let
And I know what the
address
answer
that.
is.
Well, then,
Why are you asking the question?
for City Hall, the issue of essential...
No. This critical infrastructure applies only to critical infrastructure. So don't say that.
What's the point here?
My point is that we really didn't have a whole plan to deal with those critical infrastructure issues before we started building that City Hall building.
The opportunity...
If we would have known that.
It was opportunity.
The opportunity came to give us that, which then opened up this whole realm of other discussions, which we're now involved in.
That didn't include critical infrastructure.
Well,
that's where I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, the opportunity came, and if you
Apparently
look
that wasn't
at...
a priority.
Well, if you look at communities across the state, and you'll see that in the League of Oregon Cities information, you can get that easily online, too, is that cities have a very difficult time passing asking for citizen money for city halls. People don't want to build city halls. And like Larry said, it's our business center. And it was the way that we could relieve the pressure here to get the ball rolling. And that was really important to us at the time.
But I
So-
think I think it would have been easier. I mean, yes, I understand that. I think it's going to be a lot harder sell now for the new police department than it would have been if we would have done it the other way around.
I think you got the same issue either way.
I think so either, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
You're
gonna be
asking the
tough
community for
either way.
$10 million or whatever that building's going to be. That's tough whether you did it
It's gonna be
before, whether
tough.
you do it now, what have you. The need is there. It's a question of how well you
sell
can
the need.
communicate it and lead on it.
It's been
Yeah.
there before we started building the city hall.
Yeah, the need has been there a long time, and I think to make sure that, you said all the citizens of Oregon City know about it, and I think that will be a critical issue for us when we do the polling, to see how many know it, and I think we're always surprised by things we think are obvious that the community doesn't always know about. So that'll be something to watch for, but that's why we need more time to sell it to the community. We may not be able to do it in just a year. I mean, it really will take a building process to do that. Any more seismic issues? Jim?
I had some thoughts on this, and I don't want to keep everybody, so I'll just ask
him on
Guy
the table.
a couple of issues. I was one of the commissioners that was interested in bringing this discussion forward, and it did arise out of my own research on ASCE 31 and 41 when we had the issues down with this Urban Renewal Commission in the City Hall. I think my perspective on this is different from Commissioner Smith's. The reason I was interested in bringing this discussion forward was what I perceived in the City Hall discussion was that there had been a question of whether it had been appropriately analyzed seismically through ASC, I think it's 31. And my interest was actually in redundancy because of my experience with some legal issues I had litigated down in Coos County. That, and Commissioner Neely raised this also, where there's a kind of a lag between science and policy. In other words, in this instance, the geologists really tell us that the big one in Oregon, because of what we know now about subduction zone earthquakes, is going to be a lot more intense than we had previously thought. The current building standards statewide, I think, as well as in Oregon City, have not caught up to that scientific knowledge. And what I had, in the memo I had written on this issue, wrote was that had we considered this essential facility issue prior to purchasing and retaining an architect and renovating City Hall as we did, at the outset there could have been a discussion on, because there was issue about the computers and the essential facilities that were going to be planned for the basement. Went through plans examination and put the brakes on that. I don't even know what the resolution of that computer server issue was. That's not being planned to be put in that building, because I think that was the discussion back in those months that we are not going to do that. We're not going to put those servers in the basement of the new City Hall. Is that still the case?
Correct.
Okay. But the question that arose in my mind was, well...
Let me clarify.
Sure.
There's going to be a server room in the new City Hall.
Okay.
There will be a server room.
In the basement?
Yes, that's correct. But the function of that server room will not tie to essential facilities. It won't tie to fire, it won't tie to police, it won't tie to 911.
Those servers will be elsewhere.
That's correct.
Right.
So those functions, that particular function, and Commissioner Smith was at that meeting,
right.
And so he sat in on the entire process with 14 people in that meeting. That it was brought up during the plan review process that said, okay, if this is an essential facility, then the bar gets raised. So there was some discussion as to whether or not that server room would provide essential facilities, and there was some initial confusion as to what essential was, and once that was determined at that meeting, then it became a non-essential facility, or an ordinary 2 facility, and a seismic upgrade was not necessary.
Okay. Well, my point in the memo I wrote was, well, if early enough in the process, we would have just acknowledged that part of what we're doing is creating an essential facility that would have entailed a greater expense for the new City Hall. But the question might arise is that, should the commission have confronted that decision and debated it? Because in the costs and benefits, the ability of putting that City Hall on High Street to an essential facility would have made it more seismically, it would have made it more able to withstand an earthquake, because what you need to do to create an essential facility as far as joints and structure is much greater than what we've done down there. And because we're putting the public there anyway, would we have wanted to have the option of giving our public and our employees that extra measure of safety? Would that have been worth spending that extra money anyway to create, to make that building seismically strong enough to classify it as an essential facility? Thereby, we could have put the servers in there, but we would have also given our citizens and staff that much more margin of error. I mean, it's kind of like a dice roll. I mean, we don't know, that next big one might come 300 years from now. We don't know that, but if it comes 2 weeks from now or, next year, and
more ways than
yeah,
Early March.
If I had been on commission at that point, I would have wanted to be able to have that discussion, get the extra costs, get public input, public hearing, and just say, well, should we make that decision to build in that redundancy of safety by just going ahead and building that to essential facility standards? And that was my interest in this discussion that we're having tonight. And the point I'll make is, it's not only in the building code, but I've also raised it in the context of the land use codes, because we have learned in the discussion, I think, of the Cove and the fact that the maps, the soil maps show because there's a lot of fill around the Cove, that it's a very high. It's in the maps, it's red, and it's high seismic safety risk area. So what I perceived and what I wanted to accomplish in starting to talk about this is, should we as a community try to build in a measure of redundancy by requiring our buildings, either new or renovated, to exceed the floor that is set by the IBC. Goal 7 requires that you have land use regulations addressing earthquake hazards. And Mr. Krebeisman and Mr. Sullivan had informed us that we have not adopted such regulations, which I think makes us very vulnerable in land use decisions. But so my interest in this is addressing the seismic issue as kind of like a broader issue that includes building codes, but it also includes land use, steep slope regulations, landslide hazards, etc. So I appreciate what you've given us tonight. I think moving forward, and I don't know what the Commission's wish is on this, but that was what my interest was in this discussion, was actually starting to think about what we could do above the floor of what the state regulates, to build in that extra margin of safety. And that was my perspective on this.
Sure, and I appreciate your question. Very lengthy question, but okay, but it's a relatively simple answer. Okay, the Oregon state law mandates that the Oregon codes are mini-maxi codes. You can't enforce any less than, you can't enforce any more than. So the City of Oregon City cannot enforce more stringent seismic requirements than what is mandated in the building code. There is one exception to that, however, and that's in Chapter 34, in the existing building code, which the state of Oregon has adopted as an alternate method of material. It's not mandated, but it is an alternate method material that we as building departments can use. It's a far more in-depth analysis of the buildings. And
That's Chapter 34 of the IBC?
yes, Oregon Residential Specialty Code.
I'm nerd enough that I'm going to go look at that.
Okay, that's right. You come to my office, I'll give you a copy of it to look at. Okay? But it also tells you that in existing buildings, and existing buildings is what Chapter 34 is. In existing buildings, a municipality may adopt provisions that may be either more stringent or less stringent for existing buildings than what is mandated in Chapter 34 of the Building Code. Now, I checked with my cohorts, and there are 130 jurisdictions in the state of Oregon that administer a building code program. And while I did not poll each one of them individually, I sent it out through the Oregon Building Officials Association website, specifically asking for any jurisdictions that had done so. And out of those 130 jurisdictions, the only jurisdiction in Oregon that has adopted its own seismic retrofit provisions is the City of Portland. Now, we in the code arena refer to the City of Portland as the sovereign nation as the City of Portland because they do a number of things that are different from the building code. I say that in jest, but they were actually in existence before the state building code and have some special considerations for there. But the City of Portland is the only one that does that, and most jurisdictions do not do that because if you go to implement additional seismic provisions at retrofit installations, that creates in an economic climate, it's very difficult because you may be doing, and theirs is on a scale, so if you do $100,000 worth of modification to a building, then you have to do so much. It's in their Title 24, and I have not read that document, but I know the concept of it, so hopefully that answers your question.
That is exactly the type of information I was looking for in tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Any further on this one? Okay. Rocky, did you have something? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think you gave your report early.
I gave mine.
Yeah, Okay. If there's no more business to come before us, we are adjourned. Don't forget, tomorrow evening, see you then.